Okay, looks like we're live, Larry. It's 7:03. Thanks, Larry. It's 7:03. I'd like to call the Public Works Committee of the Common Council to order on January 4th. Roll call tonight. We have Tom Livingston, Lisa Shanahan, Nora Najolski-Eichner, Dominique Johnson, Tom Keegan, and myself, Barbara Smith. At this time, Darlene is not with us. I will definitely acknowledge when she arrives. Next item on the agenda is public input. Do we have anyone who is signed up to speak? Or anyone of the attendees? I do see an attendee with their hand raised. Mr. Manzi? It looks like we have Ms. Laricella with her hand raised.
Yes, she is unmuted. Ms. Laricella.
Thank you, Larry. Happy New Year to you. And
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to this wonderful committee, one of my favorites. I wish us all good luck and safety in the future. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Appreciate your chairmanship, and I look forward to working with you in the coming months. I, with great interest, read the December minutes and the explanations given. So I just wanted to lay out a few questions that I hope can be answered either tonight, or I'm happy to have anyone reach out to me, or I could reach out to you. Based upon my review of the minutes, you'll be discussing under information and discussion the sediment removal contract. And I know a lot of wonderful work is being done with flood control. And I wanted to request or ask the question is, has green infrastructure been incorporated into either the Dreamy Hollow program or the Betts Brook project? I had brought it up months ago, and then I got busy trying to survive, the problems that associated with COVID. And the phrase green infrastructure is becoming popular. So I wanted to suggest, and I hope, Madam Chairwoman, that we can talk about some ideas for discussion items, and understanding what green infrastructure is and is not, I think would be very important. But I wanted to know is, with these two very important flooding projects, has green infrastructure been implemented or designed or The second question I have is under section D in discussion, the solid waste report. I wanted to know when, as we know, City Carding was purchased by Win Waste. I think they have a different name. And I just wanted to know, hello? I wanted to know whether, I'm sorry, there's a buzzer, not from my house. Can you hear me still?
We can hear you, Diane.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. For the solid waste report, I wanted to know what is the status of the contract. I know that, and where can I get a copy of both the old City Carding contract and the Win Waste contract? Because the last thing I had heard is that because we had, well, this was several years ago, I requested that we take a look at seeing whether we wanted to bring this out to bid under Mr. Igneri as the chairman, also the previous chair, the last chairman, Mr. Serenides. So I wanted to know, what is the contract status? Because this particular City Carding had received their recycling contract without, it was a no bid contract way back in the mid 2000, I think 15 or so. And as many of you know, and some of you will begin to know, I am a waste management professional, and I have some ideas on how we can improve and reduce our waste streams. So I thank you for that, and I look forward to listening in on this meeting. Thank you for all serving. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laricella. Let the record show that Ms. Young, Darlene Young, joined us at 7:04.
We do not have anyone else that is looking to speak at this moment.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on to the next item on the agenda under new business. Approve the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting of Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. Would someone like to move that, please? Mr. Livingston moves the minutes. Are there any corrections, deletions, changes? Yeah, I saw none myself. So that being said, all in favor, please raise your hand. And I just need to see Ms. Young. Are you there, Darlene? All right, well, we'll say we have 6 votes in favor. Oh,
Hi,
there you are.
Yeah, I can't seem to get onto my computer, the laptop, and I'm using my phone. I'm sorry.
It's okay. All right. So I take that as the yes?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so that's unanimous. All right. Next item on the agenda. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a second amendment with Priority Landscaping LLC to project DPW 2019-1, removal and disposal of deposited sediment within the watercourse, contract dated November 22nd, 2019, for an amount not to exceed $80,000. Do I have a motion, please? Mr. Keegan moves the item, and I would like to turn this over to Mr. Carr. I believe that we are going to need to amend this item, and so he's going to explain the item as well as what we need to amend.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I think a picture is worth a million words and really helps visualize the work that was being completed under this agenda item. So Drew, can you be kind enough to share your screen with the City Works mapping just for the committee so we could orient ourselves for the work location?
Sure thing.
Okay. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, everybody could see Drew's shared screen?
Yep.
All right, excellent. So I'll try to be very brief, but also precise with the description of this work. So initially, the work under this item pertained only to the dredging and cleaning of the Keeley Drive watercourse, which, as I speak, Mr. Brindlemeyer will move to the pertinent area with his mouse so that everyone can see what I'm talking about, because this would be too hard to explain just with a narrative. So as a part of the original contract, we had 5 locations where we perform watercourse maintenance. I know some members on this committee are familiar with it, but those who are not, we dredged and basically moved sediment to restore hydraulic capacity or area of flow, if you want to call it that, in 5 locations: in Keeley Drive, Hunter's Lane, Lloyd Road, June Court, and Friendly Road. So as part of that watercourse maintenance, we had not finished the maintenance, or I should say the sediment removal, for the Keeley Drive area. While we were working in that area, we also concurrently, now Drew, if you scroll over to 14 and 16 Keeley Drive, concurrently, we've also received complaints from Tropical Storm Ida and Elsa, and also in our problematic in our stormwater flooding database. The houses of 14 and 16 have been plagued in the past from flooding. Particularly, water was entering the front of 14 Keeley Drive and entering the residence basement. This has been an issue known for many years. Obviously, it was exacerbated and more at front during Elsa and Ida. So we knew that there has been an issue there. And what we want to draw the attention to is that was the flooding area. That was the area that was impacted. But again, the driveway is pitched down, so water would go into the driveway and into the basement and flood the basement for 14. Now, the adjacent property, 16 Keeley Drive, that also experiences flooding, but it's more of a landmass flooding and not so much in the structure. Drew, if you could point out too, so in between the two homes, you're going to see a green shaded area, kind of almost like a rectangle, looks like an upside down L. That is an easement that the city has currently for drainage or a storm sewer network that comes off Keely Drive from catch basins. There was 2 existing 6-inch pipes that went from the cul-de-sac on Keely Drive south and then to west, eventually discharged to the water course known as Keely Drive, water course or Keely Drive, whatever you want to call it. But that water course in that wetland area would flow by gravity to another basically water tributary. So it went from down the screen to the right, east, and then it curled, Drew, south, correct?
Yes.
And then that drainage, that path of drainage would ultimately end up at 264 West Cedar Road. There's what you call a driveway culvert underneath that property's driveway. So basically it's a pipe, and I'm sure many have seen it, but if you haven't, basically there's a pipe that goes underneath the road to allow water to pass from one side to the other. They call it a storm sewer, a culvert, drainage pipe. There's a lot of different names for it, but for this conversation, we'll refer to it as a culvert. So 264 West Cedar Road had a culvert that accepted upstream drainage, again, from the 2 6-inch pipes, and then also from a 10-inch pipe, an existing 10-inch pipe that came off of Cedar going from the south to the north. So both of those pipes, all 3 of those pipes, the 2 existing 6-inch pipes and the 1 10-inch pipe, daylighted or discharged stormwater runoff from both West Cedar Street and also from Keely Drive into this, if you want to call it a wetland marsh flat area that would eventually by gravity reach the open water course that we performed dredging and sediment removal on, then eventually was piped out and went to another water course. So Drew, from there, can you just show them the path of the drainage from right there? Exactly, right from where the cursor is. That drainage enters that area right there and then goes into another piping network or an open water course.
Yes. So,
Okay.
so here, right here, can everyone see my cursor? I wasn't sure.
Yes.
Okay. And actually, these pipes were all buried. We had found them completely under dirt. So in order for Keely Drive, which is over here, to drain, that water was just backing up and then going into the driveway of number 14 because it had nowhere to go with it buried in dirt. This invert of these twin, not only is it twin 6-inch pipes and very difficult to maintain, but it was also underground because it was lower than the pipe that goes underneath this driveway at
Right.
264.
Right. So during the water course maintenance work, we realized that there was an issue and they were all interconnected. So initially we went in there to restore the water course and open up capacity and clean out sediment. Then we realized, okay, that pipe that goes underneath 264 West Cedar accepts upstream drainage from those twin 6 inches and the 1 10-inch pipe, which comes from Keely Drive, and then the 10-inch pipe comes from West Cedar Street. So we knew that there was an issue. It was all connected. And again, we have a stormwater flooding database with problem areas. So we knew Keely Drive was definitely an area of concern. I have presented that map. I think Councilmember Livingston and Councilman Shanahan have seen it on when we did the flood mitigation project seminar several weeks ago. The quote unquote Keely Drive flood mitigation project is this project. So while we were doing the water course maintenance, we met with conservation and we amended our permit to not only include the originally scoped project to clean the water course, but also to basically reset that culvert that travels underneath 264 West Cedar's driveway, because the culvert, like Drew said, was too high. So we had to lower that pipe so that all the other stormwater runoff upstream from Keely Drive coming from those 2 6-inch pipes and then the 1 10-inch pipe from West Cedar can be adequately conveyed underneath the driveway and avoid backups upstream. And obviously over time, the flooding and the ponding in that area prior to our resolution has accumulated silt, debris, and sediment to where Drew correctly pointed out the 2 6-inch pipes and the 10-inch pipe were buried. So they were not visible at the surface. They should be open and exposed, but you would not see them. So we amended our permit. We got conservation approval to expand our scope for the project because we thought this would be a pertinent time since we're in the area. We can mobilize the contractors there. So there's efficiencies and cost reductions. And obviously, first and foremost, you're solving one of the major drainage issues that we had in this area. And again, this has been on the books for a long time. It's not a very large scope project, but it's still very important nonetheless, and something that we could easily tackle, and that we did. So as part of the project, the existing 2 6-inch pipes, and Drew, can you just go to your cursor and just show again? Those were upgraded to one single 15-inch pipe. We installed a new drainage manhole to make the turn. So if you go off Keeley Drive and then go down basically the rear property line, the pipe needs to change direction, and you typically do that with a structure. So we installed a new manhole, new pipe, bigger pipe, one pipe, 15-inch pipe, and then that other 10-inch pipe coming off of West Cedar Street. We exposed that pipe, so we unearthed it and removed a lot of the silt and debris. We also regraded that area, and Drew, if you could just show them globally, that low-lying marsh area. We regraded it so that the water can flow positively from where the pipes discharge to that 24-inch culvert underneath 264 West Cedar. That is a 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe, and that pipe was not upgraded nor changed. We only reset it and we made it lower so the water on the left side of the driveway or the upstream can get under. So now this is where the bulk of this cost that's before you tonight and underneath item number 2 was incurred. So while we reset the reinforced concrete pipe, we learned that the soil was unstable and was very soft. So as you can imagine, a very heavy reinforced concrete pipe placed on soil that's unstable will settle, it'll move, and it'll become disjointed, and you could have settlement at the top on the driveway, and you could have big dips in your driveway on the road. So that's why you want to avoid that. So engineering worked with the contractor to devise a solution, which really just entailed pilings with caps being placed at certain foot intervals underneath the pipe to serve as a support, so the pipe would not sink into the soil. Borings were not done for this project because normally for a small project like that, where you're resetting a culvert, you wouldn't do a geotechnical investigation. Not in my 20 years have I ever done one for a scope that small necessarily on a culvert in the driveway. So we encountered the issue. In order to deal with the issue, we had to install additional supports, which was an unforeseen field condition, which accounts for more than 75% of the additionally requested funds for this contract that were before the Public Works Committee tonight. You'll see that there's a value of $80,000. That value should actually be $110,000. And the reason for that is that the contractor erroneously did not include $30,000 for work previously performed under a prior pay requisition. So the initial request was $80,000, and we're respectfully requesting, Madam Chairwoman, at your consent and Public Works Committee concurrence, that amount be amended to $110,000. Again, 75% of that, approximately 75% of that cost is derived and results from the additional supports needed for that reinforced concrete pipe going across 264 West Cedar. Had it not been for that support system, we may not even be before the committee tonight asking for additional funding. Now, we have additional capital funds available. That's not the issue, but we don't have authorization on a contract to go past a certain amount, which is why we're respectfully requesting the amendment. So this would have been a little bit harder to explain, I think, via narrative. So the picture also, what I want to point out was that easement area that comes off of Keeley Drive. If you notice that green swat that looks like the upside down L, that's an easement area, basically where we could put the pipe. And if you look where the blue lines are, where the pipe actually was, it was in the easement, out the easement. So what we did is as part of this work, we changed the alignment of the pipe so that it sits fully within the city's storm sewer easement. And then obviously discharges down into the flat wetland area, then goes under the driveway and eventually to another water course and then under West Cedar Street. So that's I think without the narrative, it'd be very hard to describe this. It's a little bit of work, but it made a significant impact, especially for the 2 or 3 homes that will benefit for this. This is definitely a betterment. And again, this was one of the projects that we identified as an ARPA project, but was resolved via existing capital funding.
Anthony, can I just ask you to, before I go to questions from committee members, can you just clarify, because the backup material with the estimate, the amount there is $66,380. Then the request was for 80 in the backup, but then today you recognize that, you need to bump that up to 110. So can you just explain that discrepancy for the committee?
Sure. Yes. The additional funds, Madam Chairwoman, was requested. The 80 does not match the 67,000 plus or minus. We had built in a contingency in the event that since this work is not done yet, there's still a little bit of the work that needs to get done, which is basically repair of the existing retaining walls on each side of the driveway, some regrading, some topsoiling. So the work's not finished yet. But again, we had to start it because by the time we opened up the driveway and realized that we were encountering the site conditions and the soft, unstable soil, at that point we had the culvert to deal with. And then we also had the 2 6-inch pipes that we upgraded between on 16 Keeley Drive. We already had the site opened up, if you will, and we were already posing an inconvenience to the property owners. So we wanted to get in and get out and get the work done before the winter, which we basically did. Most of it's done. But where the pricing comes in is the contractor submitted for $67,000, give or take. He forgot to include $30,000 in there from work that was done prior to this. So that was his error. And we recognize that. And we thought that it would be best suited to include it today. But the reason why the 67 and the 80 don't match is because DPW inserted and included an additional contingency in the event that there was any other unforeseen conditions prior to completion of the project. So that's why those values don't match. But when we do resubmit the backup, which will be for the $110,000, we will have a breakout, an itemized breakout of what item is allocated for what work scope. So it'll be rectified prior to when you meet in caucus if it passes tonight, and the 110 that you see will match the 110 backup that will be submitted for the next full common council meeting.
Okay, thank you. I see a question from Ms. Najewski Eichner.
Thank you, as always, Mr. Carr, for a very thorough explanation, and I really appreciated the map. That was very helpful. And I just had a quick question, again, because this is a new committee for me, so I apologize for the sort of basic information. But question number one is, when you do dredging like this, what happens to the sediment?
Well, when we do dredging or sediment removal, that sediment is hauled off-site. And for this contract, and Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, we worked with the operations division, 2 staff members on tonight, Chris Torrey and Jessica Palladino. That sediment will be taken and disposed of through one of our contracts that we have with another vendor. So the contractor doesn't incur, well, I should say the contractor performing this work doesn't incur the cost of hauling and disposal of the sediment material. We do that under our contract because we have a better, more advantageous price.
Okay. And then the second question, I think, in reference to some of Ms. Loricello's questions earlier, I know that we spoke last time about the ways in which you all are thinking very much about, how to best manage the water issues, how to be as green as possible. Could you just talk a little bit about overall how a project like this works in terms of water management, what aspects you were able or weren't able to build in to kind of prepare for the future of water management? I know we had talked a little bit last time about new requirements for homeowners to add water storage. And I was just curious where a project like this kind of fits in that overall scheme of sort of water management that you're working on.
So this project was a bit more, I guess, straightforward in the sense that there was 2 components. There was the piping network that was undersized, clearly. And then there was the water course component. So the pipes, so the water goes into, stormwater goes into the catch basin is connected to the pipe, right? And that pipe goes somewhere. Sometimes it's to another pipe, sometimes it's to a water course or another stormwater system. But in general, the end of the pipe always discharges to an open water course, right? And all the water courses connect, and they will eventually go to a river, and the river eventually goes to the ocean. I mean, that's the overview of the connection for the storm sewer. So this project had pipes that were undersized, and we realized a lot of the problem that 14 and 16 Keeley Drive was experiencing wasn't in front of their house per se. The 2 6-inch pipes were undersized, but then that water would pond at the bottom behind 14 and 16 to the south. I guess if you want to look at it southeast down to the right in that flat kind of wetland marsh area, because the pipe going on the 264 West Cedar was too high. So this is really just a pipe configuration issue, blended with topography and with the addition of an undersized pipe. So the 24-inch pipe under the culvert is adequately sized, but those 2 6-inch pipes that were buried were not appropriately sized, and that 1 10-inch pipe on West Cedar was also buried. So that doesn't improve conditions on the roadway on West Cedar. So Yeah,
And
this
the
wasn't real-
water course that they're feeding into
Yes.
that crosses West Cedar, that's large enough to handle additional water. It looks from the map, I was trying to look on the map, it looks like that's an actual stream that
Yes,
it then feeds into. So that's actually able to handle that additional water.
up to certain storms. I mean, a lot of these water courses, unfortunately, they're constricted based on their geometry, and their geometry is really the cross-sectional area. It's the area that we see that we could touch where water flows along the sides and the bottom. And a lot of times they're referred to as swales or open water courses. A closed drainage system is more like a piping system. So when someone says an open water course or an open channel, that's exactly what you see as a brook, a stream. Unfortunately, there were no issues in the past, and unfortunately, the issues accumulated over time where it moved sediment, it moved silt, it buried 3 pipes that should have been exposed. So at one point it was working, then it stopped working, and now it's working properly again. So we're not really adding any additional water. There's no additional impervious area. We're not redirecting an old pipe and putting a new pipe somewhere that it didn't exist before, drained to before. So it's still the same drainage area and it's still the same sources. We just made it more efficient. So yes, the water will travel faster and we'll get to that culvert faster, but that's what it was doing before this issue. So we're just restoring it back to its existing hydraulic
Fantastic.
capacity.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Drew, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, if I could just add for those folks that haven't been involved in this project closer to the beginning, we have permits through Army Corps of Engineers and through the Department of Environmental Protection as well as conservation. And the way that we got those permits was because a lot of this watercourse restoration was also to improve the habitat for the local fish. Some of these streams I looked at and I couldn't believe that there were actual fish that were in these streams. And so by removing the sediment, we actually created a lot of pools, and we had to place woody debris in certain spots. We had an environmental specialist working with us who helped us direct our contractor on how to set up this that environment for the fish in order to restore this area. So it really was a restoration of the environment was how this project actually wound up going, but it also helped the city's storm system because these water courses that were clogged with all the sediment and debris that built over years and years, because we've never done a project like this in my tenure, and I've been with the city for a good 25 years. We removed a lot of material, and we're able to restore a lot of open water course.
Fantastic. That's really exciting to hear. Thank you. And I appreciate that addition.
Are there other questions about either the project or the amount? Because now I need a motion to amend. Oh, Mr. Keegan has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question for Chief Carr. Chief, you talked specifically about 2 homeowners that are going to be directly affected by this, but because we are making these improvements, isn't it safe to say that many other people may as well be their drainage will be improved as well?
Sure, you have 2 or 3 homes in the immediate area that will definitely receive the betterment from this. But if you look, I without remembering the aerial, and Drew, if you want to share your screen again, you can. Yes, we are improving the city's storm sewer network. It's not a connected network in the sense that there's not miles of pipe that are interconnected with basins and manholes, catch basins, I should say. These pipes are disconnected, so they outfall, they discharge to a water course, then they go to another pipe, and they go to a water course. So ultimately, yes, it does improve the hydraulic efficiency to the watershed. It certainly will mitigate any potential flooding from the neighbors who were not getting impacted by these storms that we're experiencing now. So if we do get more severe storms, or we get a couple or several back-to-back storms where the ground's saturated, and that increases obviously the chance for pooling and ponding and flooding, then yes, the upstream neighbors with an upstream neighborhood could certainly better from these improvements outside of the 2 or 3 homes located in the immediate area.
Thank you,
I
Chief.
just don't have that number, Councilman, but yes, it's definitely is more than 3, but the immediate betterment is 2 to 3 homes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions? Okay, so I do need a motion to make an amendment to change the amount from 80,000 to 110,000, partially due to a clerical error on the part of Priority Landscape, and to include contingency. So, Mr. Livingston?
I'll just move the amendment.
Okay, thank you. All right, so all in favor of the amendment to change the amount. Do I need to read the whole thing again?
No.
Okay, thank you. To change the amount to $110,000. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and Ms. Young, you can just use your little hand.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, you can't because you're on your phone. Okay, so the amendment passes unanimously. Okay. Let's move on to item number.
Well, you approve the
Do I-
amendment,
I have
right?
to- yeah, I have to, we have to do it again.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay, and so now I need, I already moved the motion. So all in favor of the item as amended? And Ms., oh, good, Ms. Young, you got your hand up there. Okay, so that the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Sorry. Next item, number 3. Authorize the purchasing agent to issue a sole source purchase order for CN Wood Enviro LLC for a trackless boom flail mower attachment for the trackless MT tractor, pricing not to exceed $28,000, account noted. And again, Mr. Carr, want to take this?
Yes, madam.
Discuss the attachment.
Absolutely. So just to give a little background about the item and what a trackless MT tractor is. So there's 2 things. And if you look at the second sentence, there's a trackless boom flail mower attachment that goes to a trackless MT tractor. We have the trackless MT tractor, and what MT is short for, it's short for municipal tractor. So when you see that MT, and trackless also isn't a technology. Trackless is an old brand that is kind of basically carried out through the years. They're they still are. And I know Chris knows this like the back of his hand too. Trackless is basically the HO Pen, or they actually like the CAT, the big construction mongers and the monopolies. Trackless has been a name carried throughout decades, I believe, since probably the 30s or the 40s. So trackless isn't necessarily means it doesn't have tracks. It just means that it's a small piece of equipment that can negotiate small areas like a sidewalk. So a lot of the new trackless machines, they're made to spec to fit through a sidewalk area. And why you want that is you could put different attachments on this trackless tractor. One of them being a V-plow, so that could help you plow sidewalks a little bit more efficiently. You could put things in the back of the tractor like almost like a blower, where it could pick up the snow through an auger and then throw it into the back of a dump truck, which is what we were actually doing in Washington Street when we had the barriers up there. So it definitely improves operations. And with this boom flail mower attachment, as opposed to it being a V-plow attachment for snow removal, this boom flail mower attachment, what it does is it's an arm that basically extends, and it could clear brush, vegetation, woody debris over fences, over guide rails, down embankments, or a fancy word for a layperson's word for an embankment is a slope, earthed slope, basically. Anytime we have vegetation or any work that where it's a little dangerous for the operations staff to get and even park staff to mitigate, this boom could extend and go over fences, guide rails, and takes away brush, some trees. It could also be used for leaf loading in the right of way. And there's a lot of different things that the trackless can be used for, but the flail mower in particular is basically to mow and remove vegetation from difficult and unsafe areas like inclines, side slopes, ponds, dams, things of those nature.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Oh, Ms. Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Anthony, for that description. Just curious, are we looking at buying or needing a new tractor anytime soon? And if so, are there possible options for, I assume ours run on gas right now. But is this trackless system something that we could go to electric on?
Well, the trackless system, you are correct, Councilman. The trackless system now that we have is diesel, it's gasoline, not electric. So I know that Chris could speak a little bit more to that, but we have, I believe, 1 or 2 trackless tractors. Again, Chris could speak to a little bit more. I think Chris, if you're on, if you could hear, feel free to jump in. I know that we have, I think, 2, and one's for redundancy in case one goes.
We have
one goes down.
4.
Four?
The city of Norwalk has 4 trackless machines, 2 from Parks and Recs, 2 from DBW. One of our trackless machines already has the boom arm. And the reason why we bought the boom arm for the trackless machine is because a new boom arm tractor is $150,000. So the $28,000 for the boom was a much better purchase for the city, and it does the work of like 3 people for a week in one day. It has a 17-foot reach that Chief Carr talked about. And honestly, Councilwoman Johnson, the power equipment, even for small hand tools, the technology for that is good for a homeowner, but not for public works or a landscaper. We would be recharging batteries every 10 minutes.
And this question came up too, council member, from about snow plows and trucks. And there are some specialty items and appliances that we are certainly looking into making electric. And we've done that with 11 of our pool vehicles, 2 of them being plug-in electric hybrids, and then the other 2 being other 9 being traditional hybrid gasoline engine combustion combinations. But the thing is, even from my prior experience with Norwalk, the having an all-electric plow or those heavy duty trucks, they don't stand up to the test. And I have not seen one yet that has, and again, Chris, I know in your experience, you haven't seen it either. Certainly if a manufacturer can demo and show us that it has the torque or the pulling ability that we need, especially for the wet, heavy accumulated snow, or we won't have to recharge chainsaws or stop and recharge other equipment that we have for the operation. And the staff is I think we're appropriately staffed now. And of course we could always use more staff. So I will not say that we don't need more staff, but based on the workload that we have now with the staff currently available, some of the electric appurtenances and appliances would create inefficiencies. So yes, there is an environmental benefit to it. I'm definitely not debating that or saying that we wouldn't explore that with some tools. But for the bigger tools and equipment and the heavy duty, like the snow plow or a tree trimming truck or a bucket truck, in my experience, the technology is not there yet to simulate and emulate a diesel engine. I mean, Chris, is there anything that?
No. So this machine, it cuts cul-de-sacs. It blows leaves. It also blows piles of snow that are 5 feet tall right into the back of our trucks. So when our trackless machine goes and does sidewalks and we push the snow into the road, we can put another attachment on and it'll blow that snow that we pushed, that 4-foot plowed snow, into the back of a truck. And there's nothing electric. There's nothing electric that NASA has that can do that.
Just wanted to know if it was an option. Appreciate the.
No, but we are always looking for, like, we do have electric chainsaws that we use for, for when we're working in noise areas, like an elderly housing area where or a hospital. We have electric chainsaws that we use for those instances where noise is a problem.
Right, and leaf blowers too. I mean, those are good appliances too, that where you could explore and utilize electric. They are less noisy for sure. And again, blowing a leaf, you don't necessarily need torque or pushing power or heavy duty equipment to do that. So those are the type of applications that we're certainly looking into, that we could kind of start small and at least have a vendor demo and have technology that's been around for a while, like the electric snow blowers. They've been around for a while. Electric chainsaws, they've been around for a while. I mean, a chainsaw is a chainsaw to a point. But again, we don't want to have the electric chainsaws when we're, God forbid, have another tropical storm, Isaias, and we're sitting out there cutting limbs, and then the battery pack goes dead. That's not when those appliances become ideal. But we're certainly looking to the technology and anything that we could incorporate. I know Chris and the fleet services manager, Joel Grant, are already looking into, and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way, thanks for that question, Ms. Johnson. I wonder if there's, some sort of way that, public works chiefs all over the country can, start, some sort of campaign to make that happen, because there's so much interest in the community among people, I think especially with the leaf blowers. The gas leaf blowers are such a problem for the community, and they're so noisy and they're unhealthy for the workers. Not good for the environment. So I think, it's something we'd like to see a change. I know Westport is dealing with that exact issue with the leaf blowers right now. And it's just not, it doesn't work for the Public Works Department. So, it's a fight that we have to fight, I think. And hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later. Ms. Nadjelski-Eichner.
Just to briefly follow up on that, and thank you, Mr. Torres and Mr. Carr. I really appreciate your explanation. It's very helpful to understand. Could you talk a little bit about the emissions standards for these vehicles? Because I know that that's another source of concern, is that the sort of increase in emission standards for cars has not necessarily translated to heavy equipment. Are there things that we could do in terms of retrofitting or otherwise to sort of, again, protect the public works employees more? And obviously this is a concern with leaf blowers. Or are there things that you all have already done? Again, I know that you all are seem to be very on top of most of our questions, so I don't want to presume that you all aren't already on top of this. I'm just curious about that.
If I can step in, boss, all of the heavy duty trucks, every truck that we buy have computers in them that are emission friendly, meaning that they will shut themselves off and regenerate themselves when the truck computer realizes it's putting more carbon into the environment than we want. So but with that technology is you cannot have the truck idle like all day. So sometimes you'll see a DPW truck driving to Fairfield, and we will actually drive the truck to Fairfield and right back on the highway just to clear it out, because with these computers, if you don't, they will shut themselves off, and until the truck regenerates enough where it's burning cleaner, you can't move the truck. So if you see a public works truck plowing and it's stopped in the middle of the road, because the truck will just stop. With the lights on, it's probably regenerating, and it takes about a half an hour to do that. But all of our trucks do that.
Fascinating. Thank you. That's really interesting and really good to hear. I very much appreciate the fact that you all are very much, working on this and are so cognizant of these problems. Thank you.
And Chris, those are the heavy duty trucks, correct? Like the Max, the Sterlings, and the L9000s?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, I will call for a vote on item number 3. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, item 3 passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so next item on the agenda under information and discussion, we actually have 2 presentations tonight. The first, item A, presentation by Helpsy on curbside textile collection. So it's very exciting. So Anthony, I'd like to turn
Yes.
it over to you.
Absolutely. So before we turn it over to the participants for Helpsy, just by way of background, myself and the operations staff, Chris Torrey and Jessica Baldino, both present tonight. We're thinking of ways, and as you can see from Chris's responses and my responses and staff responses, we're always trying to stay ahead of the curve while trying to manage the day-to-day operations, and that goes for the sustainability aspect of it. So I know a big topic and a big push, rightfully so, is reduction in waste stream. So, and there's lots of different ways to achieve that, and it depends what waste management model or models each municipality has that allows them to do certain things that others can't. So one thing, like the food scrap composting program, that has been very successful. It's a pilot program. It's on year 2. It's been fantastic. That has removed waste from the city of Norwalk waste stream. Then there's other ways and other things you can do. And one of the things that we've been contemplating for months, we just had not found the appropriate vendor at the time. We sat down and we said, okay, well, what's the next pilot program that we'd like to initiate? So we did the food composting pilot program, which is starting to come away from a pilot program because it's doing so well. And now there'll be the curbside textile collection program if we advance this and move forward with it. So every year and within the year, we're thinking of ways to reduce the waste stream, which is more environmentally friendly, it's sustainable. And obviously there's a revenue portion of that, which is important. I wouldn't say it's the most important out of the three, but it's definitely a consideration since things are not getting any less expensive than they were in the past. And it's continually going up to move the same ton of garbage to the landfill. So what the curbside textile collection does, and there's other neighboring municipalities that do it, including Stamford. Basically, the company Helpsy would collect textiles, and so for those who don't know what textiles are, this pertains to old clothing, shoes, belts, handbags, and those types of products that normally would end up in the waste stream in the garbage, or maybe you might be fortunate enough to give it away to Salvation Army or those in need. Others, including myself at times, have just chucked old things in the garbage because you certainly can't recycle it. So studies have shown, specifically from the EPA, and of course a study is a study and it varies on the source, but about 85% of old clothing, shoes, belts, etc., they end up reaching landfills and incinerators. So that's basically almost 100% of all these textiles do end up in a landfill. And then if you delve down into the numbers more, about 6 to 10% of landfills are nationwide after municipal and residential garbage is compiled. Looking at it as a whole, and the whole bucket of municipal solid waste in a landfill, 6 to 10% of the landfills are composed of textiles. So, that's a significant volume in tons and pounds, or however way you want to look at it, of garbage. And I know that it's the sustainable. It's a big step in the right direction for sustainability, introducing these small pilot programs, because the cumulative effect of the food scrap compost program, the curbside textile program, they seem like little programs, and they do start off small, but when you start adding 100 tons from food composting, 100 tons from the textile recovery and the recycling, things do start adding up. So there's not just one silver bullet to address the waste stream and provide that sustainability. There's a lot of different things you can do. Some things work better for some municipalities that I've seen than others. So that's why you try different things and you call it a pilot. And if it works and it's successful and has traction and attention, then you continue with it, and then you start incorporating all these other programs. So I do commend Chris Torrey and Jessica Palladino, to get these little programs up. There's a lot of planning involved. There's a lot of considerations involved, both from geographical standpoints, cost considerations, staffing, but I'm not going to take away from the presentation from Helpsy. I believe they're on. And before I turn it over to them and for their introductions, this company really impressed us because there's a lot of things where they take a lot of the textiles that some other companies wouldn't. When I say take the textiles, the condition of the textile doesn't necessarily need to be in a high quality. They will take lower quality textiles that normally a lot of these other companies that are providing similar services would not take. You'll see their presentation. It's very informative. Please feel free to ask questions either during or at the end. If there's anything that Helpsy can't answer, we can, but the objective tonight is to present this pilot program, what would be a pilot program, to the Public Works Committee, because what we like to do in February is add the agreement or the mayor's authorization to execute an agreement with Helpsy. It's a no-cost agreement, and we actually receive some revenue, but I'll let Helpsy speak to that. But the goal tonight is to vet out any questions, get an understanding of the program, and then next month submit an agreement to Public Works Committee for consideration for the mayor to authorize prior to full common council. So that's the objective for tonight. Sound good, Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
I got you with the,
Yes.
I saw the nod. So at this time,
so if we can see the presentation, that would
yes,
be great.
Yes. Helpsy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chief Carr, for that. Hi, everybody. My name is Tara. My colleague Lisa and I are with Helpsy. You really said a lot of our presentation already, so thank you for that. But I do have some slides I'd like to go through. There aren't a whole lot, and we'll have some time for questions and answers after that. If you would allow me to share my screen, we'll get to it.
Yes, you should be able to share.
Okay, let me know if you can see this. Hold on just a minute. Can you see?
We see an email right now.
Nope, that's the wrong screen. So let's go back here. Sorry about that. Let's see. Here we go. Now, can you see?
That's it.
Okay, great. Well, hello, and thank you for inviting us to this meeting and for this presentation. I'd like to go through a few things, specifically who HELPC is, our mission, the textile waste crisis, what happens to the clothes, some opportunities to divert textiles from the landfill, the residential curbside pickup program and how it works, what we accept, and then we'll have some time for some questions and answers. So HELPC is the largest textile collection company in the Northeast. We have operations spanning from the south to Vermont with 3 warehouses, one in Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York. We've got depots in the south for collecting, and our warehouses are for collecting and sorting. And basically HELPC, we're just dedicated to changing the way people feel about clothing recycling, and sustainability is always at the core of everything that we do. We have diverted, since in 2021, we will have diverted over 30 million pounds of textiles from our landfill. Since 2017, we've turned direct from consumer waste into 270 full-time jobs. We have paid over 10 million to municipalities, owners, and charities. We have avoided or helped municipalities to avoid over $4 million in waste disposal fees. And by offsetting new clothing production, we save billions of pounds of CO2 emissions and avoiding CO2 emissions, and saved over 60 billion gallons of water. HELPC is the only certified B Corporation in the clothing collection industry, and every employee that we have is paid a living wage. So what does it mean to be a B Corporation? Well, this is something that definitely sets us aside as a company from other companies within the industry. It's basically a new way of looking at business. We are businesses that use business as a force for good. We are people and businesses that meet the highest standard of social and environmental accountability, and we are working toward building a sustainable and inclusive economy. We are very proud to be the only B Corporation in the clothing collection industry. And we just recertified our B Corporation certification for another 3 years. It is an application process that's met with approval. So we're very proud of that. HELPC's mission is to keep clothing out of the trash. And as Chief Carr mentioned earlier, 85% of textiles that should be recycled are still going into the landfill or incinerators. We are trying to help fix this by making it convenient and compelling to reduce, reuse, and recycle clothing through bins, drives, and curbside pickups. Partnering with HELPC saves a lot of clothing. As I said earlier, over 30 million pounds. So what happens to all of these clothes? Well, it really depends on the condition. And as Chief Carr mentioned, we do accept clothing and textiles that other companies do not accept. The condition can be torn, soiled. It just needs to be wet, not wet, dry, and we can basically have it recycled or sold to online thrift stores for some of the higher quality items, and the items that can't be sold or resold as clothing will be recycled into fillers and stuffing. There are other opportunities to help Norwalk divert clothing from your waste stream, textiles from your waste stream, collection bins, as we mentioned, municipal clothing drives, and the residential curbside home pickup program. The textile bins can be placed on municipal properties. This is a really successful way and very convenient to divert textiles. We've placed them at municipal properties, athletic fields, schools, parks. We also assist with clothing drives. We can help with municipal clothing drives for fundraising. Our drivers go on site. We have marketing who helps promote the clothing drive, and our drivers help completely run it. Residential home pickup is one of the main reasons that we're here to talk to you about. We have experience with over 10 million home pickups. Our services are zero cost to your municipality, and we actually pay you money per pound of textiles that are collected. So the more we collect, the more we pay to your municipality. Our curbside collection program complements your already existing recycling programs. It's basically a natural fit. You are already very supportive of the programs that you've got, and even your newest program, the food waste, seems to be quite successful, or the food scraps program seems to be very successful with your municipality. Basically, how our home pickup works, your residents will visit the website, they'll fill out a form and set their bag of textiles out for collection. They'll go to your residents will go to a custom website. They will select home pickup request, and then they'll fill out their name, email, phone number, address, and zip code. Now they fill this information out so that if our drivers arrive and the textiles are not outside, they can give them a call and find out if maybe they forgot or if they placed them in a different spot. And also the pickup dates are based on the zip codes. So if you've got a really full area with a lot of potential pickups, then there may be multiple dates, but most of the time, there's only a day that we've already worked out with you associated with your zip code. So once your resident puts in the zip code, it'll pull up the dates available. And then all your resident does is place the labeled bag outside for pickup, and we do the rest. This is a list of the items that we accept. As Chief Carr mentioned earlier, we do accept all manner of textiles, accessories, clothing, kitchen linens, stuffed animals, school uniforms. The only thing we ask is that they are dry and they do not have any type of chemical on them. But as far as broken or disrepair, that is not a problem. Here's some frequently asked questions that we get. Where should I leave my bags of clothing? Does it matter what kind of bags I put the clothing in? We need to make sure that the clothing remains dry. So we do prefer plastic. And we also, if there's any issue other than just leaving the bag of textiles outside, at the curbside or on your porch, we just ask that it be noted in the special instructions. If there's any questions, well, we'll go to questions now, but we do have those frequently asked questions that should be in the PDF that you all received.
So how do you guys make money?
Hold on just 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and stop that. There we go.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yeah, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa. I'm also with HelpSee. How do we make money? It's a couple of different things. We are a B corporation, like Tara said, so we are for profit, but we use business as a force for good. So how do we make money? Depends on the condition of the clothing. The short answer is, well, we resell what we can. We get some nice things that still have tags or in boxes, UGG boots, name brands that you'd recognize. So with those kind of higher end items, we have a sorting facility and they are basically photographed and sold on like an online thrift store. That's mostly how we make money.
Yeah. If I could just, and how often you typically make pickups?
So for the home pickups, we would do, is your question about the home pickups or the bins?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Home pickups, we would start, like Tara said, with 1 day a week, 35 to 40 slots, and to kind of monitor the demand. The biggest kind of determining factor of the success of the program is, of course, like residents' engagement. Do they know about it? So sometimes it's a little bit slow to start. So we would start with 1 day a week, 30 40, somewhere in that range, pickups per day and monitor it. If our slots are filling up quickly, then we would add a second day or add a second driver on the same day to kind of make sure we meet the demand. We want our program to be as convenient as possible for residents. So going to their houses is, pretty convenient, we think, but it's not convenient if all the slots are full and they have to wait 2 weeks. That's kind of not the culture that we live in. So we monitor that closely. And of course, the more clothing we collect, the more demand is there, the more you make, and we are incentivized to make sure that we're meeting that.
And do you have a sort of a marketing program you can share with the city about how to get the word out?
Absolutely. We have kind of a standard media kit that includes things like a press release template that you can, of course, modify, digital content that you could post on social media. If you have Twitter accounts, whatever the distribution channels we already have set up is just to share them. If you have weekly newsletters or monthly or quarterly, however it's set up, we have we're able to help with that. We actually have made a new hire who will be working with the municipal home pickups continuously and kind of helping engage the communities that we're in.
Just 2 more quick questions. Do you do any other communities in the area?
We are in Stamford, Connecticut, mostly, but beyond that, we are in Massachusetts, New York, and New Hampshire.
And last question is, when can you start?
Great. Once we have a signed agreement, our lead time is like 4 to 6 weeks. And that just kind of allows for most like promotions of the program. We don't want to start tomorrow. Nobody knows about it. So we'd like kind of a little bit of lead time for that. And then from the operations point of view and routing and stuff like that, 4 to 6 weeks gives us enough time to get
Great.
going.
Thank you. It's terrific.
Ms. Young has a question.
Yeah, so Councilperson Livingston asked my last 2 questions, but so you said to Stamford and where else in Connecticut?
So in Connecticut, we're just in Stamford.
Just in Stamford.
We have about 10 municipalities we work with in Massachusetts, including Cambridge and the city of Boston.
And so what's the magic number? Like, so what if, this sounds great and it all, those things sound great to a lot of people, but what's the threshold for something that when does it not make good business sense for HelpC?
I think what you're asking is there a minimum number that we would service? So hypothetically in the beginning, if it's slow and only 10 people sign up, are we going to service them? The answer is yes. And how we make that make sense for us is we have, like Tara mentioned, quite a few bin locations. So if it's a day where we only have 5 pickups in Norwalk, well, then our dispatching team would route it so that, okay, we're picking up from those 5 houses, but also servicing our other locations so that we make a full route out of that. The sign up cuts off, like hypothetically, if we agreed on like Wednesdays, residents would not be able to sign up Tuesday for tomorrow, right? The lead time is about 2 days. So if they were looking at Tuesday and our day was Wednesday, they'd be like looking at the following week. And the reason we have that lead time is to make kind of those operation decisions.
And so what is the bin program look like? Do you find strategic places on city property where those bins are placed? How does that work?
Sure. The city of Boston and Cambridge have done that pretty successfully. So they've identified basically municipal properties that could host bins. Some of them are parks, some of them are DPW's transfer stations, some of them are public housing, some of them are just parking lots. But basically anywhere that is kind of high traffic and is visible that would be convenient for people on their way to work, on their way home, running errands, is where we would be able to place bins. Cambridge has some in parks as well. So the bin program would work that way.
They could be right beside the food scrap bins that we
absolutely.
Ms. Nadjelski Eichner.
Thank you so much for this. Just a quick question. Is there a minimum number of bins the city is committing to hosting?
No, it's all at your option. So the agreement will say the verbiage, and I think, Anthony, it was quite a while ago, but I think we had sent you a draft version of the agreement. And basically it's at your option. So the agreement's written in a way that you can choose to execute any of the programs, whether it be home pickups, the bins, or clothing drives, or any combination thereof. Some municipalities will choose to start with home pickups and then add on the rest. It's really up to you. But there's no minimum number, but I think adding it next to food scrap sounds great. It sounds like a natural fit.
And that's a program that's been very successful. So did I see Ms. Shanahan?
Yeah, I had a concern if sometimes people get to be a little sloppy and people might put things in those bins that aren't appropriate. Is there a charge back to the city, or how do you handle things like that?
It does happen. I like the adjective sloppy. I've never used it for that, but it definitely applies. So unfortunately, people do leave things that are not textiles, sometimes with good intentions and sometimes because they're just being sloppy. If it causes any kind of overflow or unsightliness, we do have a 24-hour hotline and we would respond within 24 hours to get that cleaned up. There's absolutely no charge to the city.
Madam Chairwoman, I just wanted to clarify one thing too, that this contract would be initially, since it's a pilot program, I know Helpsy, we've spoken about this before. We currently have a vendor that supplies bins for textile recovery and recycling. And since there are a number of other companies that would provide that service, the city would have to go out to an RFP to actually for that part of the contract. The reason being is because since there's other vendors that technically compete against Helpsy, we couldn't just issue that as part of our contract without a proper RFP process. And myself and Chris Torrey and Jessica Palladino spoke to the law department and purchasing about that. So this, just to clarify, this is strictly only for curbside pickup. We do have bins now, and I think Chris and Jessica could add. We have a vendor, and I apologize, I don't remember the name, but the vendor does currently supply textile
Use
bins.
Again.
I'm sorry?
The vendor is Use Again.
And they currently supply bins at the
Bins at the Norwalk transfer station, and they collect those on a weekly basis.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying. So I guess the contract would only include then the home pickups, and later down the road, if things wanted to be added, they absolutely could. But we're open to it.
Awesome. Lisa, can you speak a little bit too about, you mentioned when we met in the past that you would coordinate, especially if the pilot program expands and it's very successful, as I'm sure it will be, that the more drivers and equipment that you add would be coordinated with our sanitation schedules with our third-party vendors. So just so
Yes,
that
that's
it don't
always
overlap.
absolutely. So that's always part of our goal, is to work with the municipality to the day that we offer. So I randomly selected Wednesday as an example, because we would pick a day that makes sense, that's going to like eliminate or reduce cross-contamination and confusion with other curbside programs going on, such as trash and recycling. We wouldn't want to be the same day as recycling or trash, because residents will leave stuff outside and then it's confusing. The trash person took my stuff. He didn't take my stuff. Why hasn't someone come pick it up? And then it's a nightmare of things that we try to avoid. So what part of the kickoff process is we look at the zip codes. So like Tara mentioned, they sign up using a zip code. So they'll put their name, address, and the zip code is what populates the days of the week that kind of drop down from the menu. So for example, I'll just use Boston. Boston's trash and recycling schedule, you can imagine, for a city that size, is kind of crazy. And they have basically trash and recycling every day at some section, and there's no way to say like, okay, this half is going to be Tuesday, this half is going to be Thursday. So we're doing Saturdays and Sundays for them, because that way we won't interfere at all with any of their existing programs, and we'll have a more successful program and less frustration on everybody's behalf. So that would be part of what we would coordinate.
And then you also prepare the website. That the way we envisioned in our last discussion was that DPW operations would update their webpage to add the like they did for the food scrap composting, and also for any other future programs. But we would add a link, a little narrative, and then with a link to your webpage, which would be the PR and almost obviously our in-house communications director would manage our social media. But for those kind of just trolling through the Norwalk website who want to learn more about this, we would give a little blurb or narrative about what you do, and then there would be a link to your company, your mission, your services, and what exactly textile recycling is. Correct?
Yes, and that would be part of that media kit I alluded to earlier. So it'd be here's a little blurb you could copy and paste and put in your website. Here's a link to scheduling. Here's a video about us. That type of thing could absolutely be done.
Can I just have one thing that concerned me about what you said, which is putting the items in plastic bags. That I really don't like that. I mean, we were one of the first municipalities to get rid of plastic in our stores, and to encourage people to use plastic even for a good purpose kind of rubs me the wrong way. Is there another way of looking at this, or
Absolutely. Some of our competitors require them residents to purchase specific bags for home pickups. What we're hoping residents do is use bags that they already have, grocery bags. Plastic will keep it dry, so that's kind of our goal there. But we do have people who put things in Amazon boxes or paper bags. It's just a shame if things get wet or due to weather and the clothes are ruined, and then they're really not usable, and then they do have to be discarded. So I would think of it as just reusing bags that are already out there, as opposed to
Or other containers, you know.
yeah, or other containers. Yeah.
Okay.
And like Tara mentioned, we do have a special instruction section on the scheduling website. So for people who live in areas where there might not be like a covered front porch, or they maybe don't have a driveway, they live in an apartment, townhouse, whatever the case may be, or they don't want to leave their stuff out, they just write a little blurb. We get that all the time, like, call me when you're here. I'll bring my clothes out. Our drivers are trained. Also with the phone number, if they can't find the bags, they call. And we have a pretty high success rate. About 85% of home pickups are done successfully. So I think a lot of that has to do with those.
Okay, good. I just don't want the city to be encouraging the use of plastic bags.
No, I would encourage it. I would think of it as keep the clothes dry so that we can collect them. And there are plenty of plastic bags out there, so we certainly don't want to create more. Or just reuse what we already have that's already out there.
Can I just ask, what do you do with the plastic bags that you receive the clothes in?
Great question. So a lot of the plastic bags, let me back up. It depends on the condition of the clothes. So when they get to our sorting facility, the clothing is sorted. The bags are more or less like open up, and they're set aside. They are, I think they're recycled through like the warehouse. I know all of our cardboard is recycled. All like the plastic that we use is recycled. I don't know the details of who does it.
Okay. Any other questions? I mean, it's a
Just
great program, great idea, and much needed. You know, just these quirky little things that we want to figure out.
Lisa, one last thing, the revenue. I don't know if you touched upon it on the presentation, but is it in the realm? I can't remember. Is it 2 cents or 10 cents a ton?
It's 2 cents a pound.
Pound,
So
excuse me.
$40 a ton.
And just for reference, we pay $95 a ton to have our MSW disposed and hauled away from the city of Norwalk.
So we like to think of the value is the 2 cents a pound, yes, but also the tipping fees. You know, if we're able to divert stuff from the landfills, that would be saving you some of those costs.
Oh.
Michelle,
Anthony, I had a question with regard to that. Do you have a sense of how much we are disposing of in clothing, like what the savings could be in our tipping?
Sure. So the average person discards 100 pounds of textiles per year. 85% ends up in the landfill, which is surprising if you think about it, because that means only 15% ends up in a bin in a Goodwill store, at a thrift store. 85% ends up in the landfill. So we really think of the landfill as kind of our competition. We like to set a goal of 7 pounds per person is what we would aim to collect. So based on the population, that would be the math that we would do as like our goal for the first year. Of course, that 7 pounds kind of includes more than one collection models with like the home pickups, or later on, like Anthony said, bins or clothing drives and that type of thing.
Okay. And lastly, Lisa, you manage, basically you'll manage the app, your pull downs and your forms, your company. And I know this was a concern, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee from the department. We're not looking to create extra work for customer service or ourselves. We truly, and we spoke to Stanford, who spoke very highly of Helpsy. We want it to be a program where we would have broad oversight and obviously deal with issues as they come about, especially with residents. But we don't want customer service to get inundated with calls, nor the Department of Public Works. So that was a concern of ours to Helpsy, which, Lisa, can you just give a little bit of background of how you manage and oversee the program and what the interface is between Helpsy, the city of Norwalk, and the residents?
Sure, absolutely. So all the scheduling is done on Helpsy's end. So that includes anything that's missed. I mentioned previously we have like 85% success rate, but what happens to the other 15% that either forgot to put their bags or somebody else took them for whatever reason. That's all done by HelpSy. So anything that's considered a failure, they get an email from us and like, hi, we're Mr. Bags. If you need help, call us back. If it's a newer driver, maybe, then we would reach out and call them. We do have a 24-hour customer service line. So all the kind of communication that residents will get will have our number, like call us if you have any questions, email us if you have any questions. With all the municipalities that we've worked with, they get very few questions. Occasionally, I had a couple questions from Newton, Massachusetts and Salem where the residents were emailing DPW and they just forwarded it to me and we're like, and we took care of it. But that really happened, I could say maybe less than 5 times. So it's really a smaller number. Something else that we did with Cambridge that I think was really helpful with the launch of their program is they held something like it was like a town hall meeting for residents. And so we kind of gave an overview of like how the program works and educated residents on kind of what to do and answer some frequently asked questions there. But the relationship, or kind of what the lift is on the city's end, is getting started and helping us promote it. We do have a community outreach person who'll be working. So she may be working with whoever your marketing is periodically, maybe every quarter, sending new materials for you guys to post and kind of keep in the residents' ears. Once a month, at the end of the month, you'll get a report. This is how many pounds we picked up. You'll get the quarterly reports and really just any other information that you'd want, but that's kind of where we start out.
Somebody had a question earlier too. I believe it was Councilmember Shanahan. So just for metrics and rough numbers, if we assume 24,000 tons of municipal solid waste is being exported, and I know Chris and Jessica could go into a deeper dive with these numbers, but just for round numbers, if you assume 24,000 tons of MSW does get hauled and transported out of the city of Norwalk, that we're paying tipping fees on. If you take 5% of that, I know we threw a number earlier of 6 to 10% of the landfills, but just to be conservative, if you take 5% of the 24,000, that's about 1,200 tons. And I believe Lisa mentioned that the numbers work out, the 2 cents per pound, and then the ton, it's about $40 a ton. So if you do multiply out the 1,200 tons, or even just say 1,000, and you might not get that the first time, but this is after a fully groomed and grown program. If you do reach the 1,000-ton mark, that is about a $40, that's a $40,000 revenue. And again, that's obviously a savings because now that's 1,000-ton. You're getting revenue of $40 a ton as opposed to paying $95 a ton to take out the very same garbage. So it's a revenue that offsets the expense if you look at it that way, which I think is good. I mean, if you look at the food scrap program, we already have over about 100 tons. I mean, since July of 2020, and I mean, bulk of that was from the Halloween holiday, which kind of drove up the numbers. But I mean, that's 100 tons right there of the food composting. So, it might take a few years to get to that 1,000 tons. And Lisa, how long have you seen the I guess you could use Stamford. How long does it take a city adjacent to us, that's they're a good model for it. How long did it take to start seeing a difference in the waste stream or meet the metric that you originally implemented? Was it 5 years, 1 year?
We haven't been doing this for 5 years, but I would assume by 5 years, we'd definitely be there. The biggest thing that we've seen is the involvement of residents. So Newton, Massachusetts is a great example. They have a lot of green communities and Facebook pages, and they kind of promoted from the beginning. So they had a lot of residents use it. Stamford, they're kind of in a transition as far as changing leadership. So we're a little bit stagnant there. So I think it might take a couple of years. But that is definitely, our goal. So I would say my best guess would be like 1 to 2 years.
To reaching the goal, or to start getting traction to
reaching the goal
when
is
you
to reach
say,
the goal is to reach traction. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, if we said 5% of the waste stream the first year, it might get 1%. I mean, we might have people who don't know about it. They might refuse to do it. They might be lazy. With COVID, we noticed, things are trending back to normal to some degree, but there's less recycling actually going out now, less garbage, which is good because life's resuming to some normalcy, but less recycling. So when you start seeing less recycling numbers, you start wondering, will be less of this. So that's why I was just wondering if it would take, what a realistic goal is, if we set 5% to begin with, or if you've seen it's 1% or
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the numbers like that you're looking for, but I will say we do track the weight very carefully. Like I said, every month we do. So that's something that
Okay.
if we notice after the first month that our collections were super low, we would then open up that dialogue. What can we do? Like, how do we get this program out? Who can we involve? What can we do to help promote it? We do that at least once a month, and payments go out quarterly. So definitely quarterly. But it is, our goal to improve those numbers. So we are incentivized to make sure that that happens. And,
Thank you.
We're very, we try to be very collaborative and have that dialogue. So if there are concerns, we keep that open.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Imagine you see bumps at the change of season when people are cleaning out closets and things like
Yes,
that.
absolutely. The busiest time is when people change out their closets. So beginning of fall, spring is spring clean outs. Sometimes after the holidays, there's a little bit of an uptake. People are like out with the old, in with the new.
Right. Well, thank you. Great presentation and an exciting venture for Norwalk.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so let's move on to B, discussion. Item 1, project status. So first we have the sediment removal contract update, and then on to curb, sidewalks, and paving.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I believe we covered the sediment removal update under item 2.
Right, okay.
So I think we're good there.
We did.
Yeah,
Okay.
and to be honest, Mrs. Chairman, I think that there is really not much for us to give you any updates since in the last meeting I mentioned that all the construction was stopping right on that week. We have already the plants closed, so nothing have changed since. What we ended up adding that you have in your backup, we have the engineering metrics for 2021. We're happy to go through with it, but if you guys want, we made a comparison of what we did last year and what we did this year. So unless if you guys have any further questions, we can move up to the other presentation if you'd like.
Okay. All right, so moving on to the engineering metrics.
Yep. Madam Chairman, I'll just hit the metrics very, very quickly before we get to the next presentation. It'll be 3 minutes or less. So what the staff did an incredible job of doing, Vanessa, Paul, Drew did a fantastic job. 2 years ago, we implemented, we wanted to capture what we did from 2019 to 2020. And then we thought it was pertinent to keep that trend going to see, okay, what baseline, what are we following? And it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but I could tell you between 19 and 20, we did more paving than we did in 2020 than we did in 2019. We did more curb and sidewalk. So we were trending in the right direction. Then COVID hit, a little bit of a different story. Now we're into 2022. And looking back on 2021, still was a very good year. We did, just to give you snapshots, underneath the road paving, the length of the roads, the number of the roads, and the amount of asphalt that we put down the road all average out to about 25% less than we did in 2020 versus 2021. We attributed that to now we have the introduction of a drainage on-call contract. So now that we're fixing some of the storm sewers prior to paving and fixing sanitary sewers prior to paving, some of that work and that scheduling forced, unfortunately, the contractor to move on to different roads. So that was the incorporation of that contract, although a very good contract and very necessary contract, and ultimately stops us from having to go back and fix a problem on a newly paved road. That did change a little bit of the programming, and we knew that we would work through this for the first few years since it is a new contract, but nonetheless, it's a betterment for the city. So we're down 25% there. We did encounter a few wider roads, longer stretches. When I say wider, from curb to curb, the width. A good example of that is West Rocks Road. That is a very wide road. The shoulders, it's not like a local road going down, First through Fifth and Cove. It's a bigger road. That also impacted a little bit of production. And lastly, the prep work. Some of the roads that were in our contract, not the base contract. And I want to be clear that Grasso did complete the base contract roads. They did. The base contract basically means that these are the roads that we have to do. Then we have what's called amendment roads, meaning that they're ready to get repaired. They're getting ready for rehab. That if the contract is still there and they're still working and they finish the base roads soon enough, they can move on to what's called an amendment street. Means it's ready for paving, but that's pool B. We have to make sure they get Pool A done, which is the base contract, and there's Pool B, which is the amendment contract. So the prep work, meaning the curbs and the sidewalks for those Pool B or the amendment streets, it was either delayed due to the drainage, due to curbs and sidewalks, so the contractor couldn't dig in and start those areas. More so because now we're butting up against the winter. So we had to call it quits. The plants closed down December 17th. But that was the only reason really why they couldn't get to the amendment streets, was just because the preparatory work, as the committee does or does not know, some may have not heard this, especially for the new committee members, we repair and rehabilitate curbs and sidewalks on the roads that we're going to pave. So in sequential order, we'll fix the underground utilities first, storm and sanitary, because those belong to the city. Then we will install new curbs and sidewalks, and then we will pave. So that's the ideal progression. Now, could that get taken out of order? Could things shuffle along the way? Absolutely, of course they can. But that's the model that we try to always implement and follow. The pavement management program and the curb and sidewalk program are tied together, and the curbs and sidewalks, more times often than not, go in first, then it gets paved. But before that, we fix the utilities. So that's the only reason the road paving was down. Of those three reasons.
Oh, there was also, we have to remember the traffic last year. The fact that there was pretty much no traffic with everybody staying home, it was much quicker to get to some of those small roads. So with that, we were able to add a lot of new streets last year to our road paving, where this year, as Anthony stated, we did our base contract bid, but it's still, we just took like normal time to do it, because now we had to deal with traffic, with the tours, with alternating lane and all that kind of other things that he stated before.
Just quickly, is this a calendar year or a fiscal year number?
Calendar.
We did as a calendar year. It's all the way up in the matrix is between January and December.
So does that mean we should, because we're in the middle of as you mentioned, Chief, the like the Grasso contract and the Schedule B or whatever it is, roads. So is it going to be a pretty busy spring? Because it's still
not necessarily. It will be average to what we have. It's not that we'll be busier than before, Tom. What will happen is that we still have some roads that we had to move to the spring, but we know that they can only handle a certain amount of work, and that's usually what we move to spring, and that's what the amendment to their contract was. So we add to their amendment exactly how much they can handle.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking about is we enter the contracts on a fiscal year basis, right? And so I'm curious, I don't mean this as criticism, I'm trying to think about how I should think about that in the context of looking at these reports on a calendar year basis. I mean, whether it's something to even think about at all, I don't know. I mean,
but the only reason why we did that was that when we start, we have to get some data, because we send to the state due to reimbursement for the paving program. And that data that we started counting a couple of years ago used to be calendar year. So that's
okay,
why
I
we
love
ended
the
up doing
data.
as a calendar year. Yeah. So that's why I'll be honest, I struggle when we were putting this together. I went through the same question. Should we show as contract year that will be more our fiscal year, or should we show as our calendar year? But unfortunately, also to make things a little more harder, we do not award every single contract at the same time. So our sidewalk contract is not necessarily follows our road paving contract. So we try to give some time in between those. So usually we have paving out right during the winter, and sometimes we have concrete a little bit later. By the time that they start, we have few months. So you're not gonna have a very good snapshot about that exactly contract. So that's why we thought, let's go by the calendar year, so we know exactly what we did during one whole year, regardless of who is the contractor.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. It's apples to apples. So I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the data, because this is the first time I've seen this, having been on this committee for 6 years. It's great.
Yeah, and we want to try to keep that also as good. I just want to also bring up to you guys that last year, our increase for paving was over 35, around 33%. So we actually did very good this year also comparing to average. Last year, because of all COVID and everything, we didn't have as much problems with the supply chain. A lot of crew missing work due to COVID was a little more slow. This year was much more hectic to get people working. We actually ended up doing a little bit better than the previous year because we're down on about 26%, but we were up 33 last year. So in other words, we are actually on average above 7%.
And the same goes for the curbs and sidewalks too.
We had
curbs-
100% over last year.
Right, there was a 100% increase from 2019 to 2020. So now we're just 6% below from prior year. But if you go 2 years prior back, we're still almost double, 100% more than the prior year. And don't forget too, permits. It's very important to note that the engineering staff has been very busy, and I think that this is a good snapshot. If you look under the permit section, the encroachment permits have increased approximately 17%. Permits issued. So there was a review and there's an issuance of the permits. Driveway permits were 66% and plan reviews were up almost 20%. So engineering's been very busy. And again, navigating through the pandemic and alternating work schedules and working from home and the applications and development hasn't stopped. And I think you've seen that in other departments too for planning and zoning as well. So that's a good thing. It's good for the city. It's good revenue. It's good to see people working. But the engineering department has been steadfast with handling those numbers. And we don't really have any increase in staff. So we've made good with what we had and we've managed and navigated through the increase. So thank you to Vanessa and her staff for that.
I just wanted to add that we are stretching the dollar further. This doesn't reflect our total dollars available. We still have funds available to spend in the spring. We only postponed some of that work until spring because there is more prep work to be done. And we did get too close to the winter time that we didn't want to start opening Pandora's box at the approach of winter and then find ourselves caught, whenever it comes time to pave that we're too close to winter. So if we were getting too close to get the handicap ramps in or to get some kind of improvement done prior to paving, those are the types of streets that we pushed until spring, not to get caught unaware before the winter shutdown.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next item under tree operations report and programming, we have the Eversource Energy tree trimming permit work presentation.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. So we have 2 representatives from Eversource with us tonight who will be presenting to the committee. And just a little bit of context and background. This Eversource, the tree trimming permit for the work, they every year Eversource submits a permitting package to the Department of Public Works, and it's coordinated through operations, engineering, and then eventually implemented with oversight from DPW operations while Eversource's contractors performing the work. But procedurally, how it used to be was that this permit application, which would be a map of where Eversource is going to work and generally a scope of what they're going to do and how long they're going to be where. So it was a work plan, illustratively and both with a narrative. And the plan was submitted to the tree advisory committee. So it was posted on the website. It was discussed at a public meeting, but it wasn't as visible as we'd like it to be. And we understand the goal and the mission and fully support the preservation of the existing tree canopy and obviously want to expand our existing tree canopy, both in private and public. So with that, we encouraged Eversource to put together what we feel is a very, very robust, illustrative, easy to follow presentation of exactly what maintenance activities they're going to do, why they're doing it, where they're doing it, and for how long. The map is very easy to follow. There's a lot of other informative slides that I know from my staff that Eversource has not submitted. So thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Sam, for basically resurrecting and modifying and enhancing any prior documents that were submitted. So my 3rd year here, I haven't seen a presentation or at all from regarding the tree trimming, but I haven't seen the application and the material that you submitted as informative as it is. So we appreciate that. And I think that's going to help with a lot of the guide and navigate through the presentation tonight. But we understand the sustainability aspect of it. We want the Public Works Committee and the Common Council, and as you're all residents, we want you to feel comfortable with whatever Source is doing. We want you to know and understand that DPW is providing a lot more than just limited oversight, and there's a lot of interactions as part of the daily operations that we have with Eversource to ensure that they're not over pruning, they're not removing trees unnecessarily, that the tree health that they ascertain from their arborist matches with what Mr. Torrey and our professionals say on the city side. So the collaboration has always been there. So thank you, Kathy, and welcome, Sam. Before I turn it over to Chris or Paul, if they want to add anything, and Eversource, we're very happy with where we ended up. And the whole point of this presentation is to ask a lot of questions, and we don't want anybody to hold back. And again, Eversource is very plugged in and tuned into the comfort level and people's feelings and perceptions. And what we want to try to do is be as transparent as possible and walk everybody through what's going to happen over the next 12 months, why it's going to happen, and what mitigation plans and strategies is in place to move forward and preserve our canopy and maybe even enhance it to a degree. So Chris, if you want to add, or Paul, if you'd like to add, otherwise we could turn over and introduce Eversource.
I just want to say that part of this was the first time that Eversource had given us a presentation as well thought out and laid out as they have. And I thought that this is a great first step in being more transparent with the city on tree removals. So with the new ordinance and the first time that they've come to do a permit, this should be the norm to come before this committee, do a presentation, answer all the questions, do all the explaining, tell you where we're working so you guys can tell your constituents. But this is very well put together, and I thought it would be beneficial for you guys to see it. So thank you guys.
I'll just add to Chris's statements too, that we've never seen a presentation put together like this. Sam and Kathy did a great job with this in the years we've been issuing the permits. And then once this is done tonight, then on the 25th, the next tree advisory committee meeting, we would put the permit on the agenda like we would normally do every other year, but we wanted to come to the Public Works Committee first.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Paul. Kathy, are you and your team ready to present?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
All right, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chief Carr, Madam Chairman, and all the committee members. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and we're very excited to share the work that we have planned for 2022, and we definitely would love to answer your questions. We welcome them. I'd like to introduce the man who's really done all the work here, Sam Berg. He's our arborist supporting the city of Norwalk. He's done an outstanding job collecting data and details that, as Anthony, Paul, and Chris have said, really do tell the story of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and give you information for your constituents to hopefully arm you with that data to be able to answer questions. But we're always here behind the scenes. If more information is needed, we can certainly follow up with you or the city. So I'd like to introduce Sam to walk us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for allowing us this forum. My name is Sam Berg. I do vegetation management for Eversource and for the city of Norwalk. I also manage the 7 other towns in the lower panhandle of Connecticut. We are aware of the revised tree ordinance, and that's part of what facilitated this package that I did put together. And thank you for the kind words. Let's hope it carries through. Vegetation management, on my standpoint, is something that is dictated to us through PURA. It's a required job through PURA, and it's based on mileage and a 4-year rotation. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Everything that I'm going to be sharing with everybody tonight, I've already sent over to Paul and can be made public on the City of Norwalk website, as well as this forum. see, can everybody see my screen? Okay. So this first slide is simply a overview of the threefold flyer that we hand out to the residents for gaining permission to do the scheduled trimming that we have on the property. And it explains what we're doing, how we do it. This is the outside cover, this is the back, this is the inside fold. The permissioning specialist would have his name and number there through my contractors that will be performing the service. And they illustrate the pruning for the homeowner based on the lines that are in front of their house. So some people may see clearance like this, some people may see clearance like this. And at this point now, we very rarely do this anymore. And that type of pruning, ground to sky, 8 feet off the conductors, was a style of pruning that had been ended at the end of last year. So we're not going to see that style of pruning any longer. So you can kind of look away from that. We do maintain it if it's already in place. There's actually very few roads in Norwalk that have ETT and that style of pruning. I do apologize if I speak with a lot of acronyms. Part of this is going to be a definition key. So ETT is enhanced tree trimming. And like I said, that program that started back in the 90s is no longer. And you won't see that kind of pruning moving forward. So the other thing that I included in this package for everybody is just a quick snippet of the shared responsibility that we all have. And it's not just me, it's not just the towns, it's not just private homeowners, but it's the DOT as well. And how we try to partner with our towns, partner with our customers to get the clearances that do help reduce the amount of outages associated with tree. And was something I threw in there for your own reading. I also put in a list of 44 trees that are recommended for plantings and in and around power lines. These 44 trees, and there are natives on this list. It does outline which ones are native and which one are not. And these are all trees that have low canopies as well as low growth habits and are compatible with electric lines. The one thing I do want to clarify is that I'm speaking in terms for roadside distribution. These are the lines that are out on your roads, in front of your house, along the backside of your house. These are not anything else other than roadside distribution for the metrics that I'm going to be outlining this evening. And this list of the 44 trees, and it's not just limited to these, there are countless other species that are compatible with the lines. And you can even go as far as to include, bee pollinating species as well. And we're encouraging that under some of our transmission lines as well. The next slide I have here is for the town. So this is something or for the city of Norwalk. This is something that we recently put together this year. I do realize it does say Town of Norwalk at the top. I apologize for that. It's how they formed these report cards for the towns. It's based on direct information from our outage management systems. So for pruning this year, we're going to be doing the scheduled maintenance trimming 78 miles of 221 miles of line for the city of Norwalk. Backbone, which is our main arteries, and then it branches off from there. There are 26 miles that we'll be pruning. So roughly a third of the city's lines. Between the years of 2016 and 2021, there were 192 blocked roads in the city of Norwalk. And last year was a very light trim year. This lower
I'm
metric.
sorry to interrupt. Can you explain what backbone miles are compared to total miles?
Yes, well, backbones are going to be your three-phase or any portion of the three-phase circuit that is not fused. So three-phase meaning when you see those upper lines that are actually three lines running across the top, that's what we consider backbone. So that comes directly out of the substation and moves up a main road like Route 7 or down Main Street, and then it branches off into laterals from there. So the difference in mileage is a single phase versus an unfused single phase and a triple phase line.
So does this mean you'll be doing 104 miles total?
No, 78 total. That's total mileage in the far left.
And that includes the 26?
That includes the 26.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll show you that in another slide as well. Last year, 2021 was a very light trim year for the city. So we like to put that information in there because the homeowners have the right to refuse the work. And light trims are a compromise between the homeowner and ourselves. So we won't get full specification, but we'll get a lighter specification. And last year we only had 7 refusals and light trims, but over the course of the last 4 years, there were 227 of them. And that does limit our ability to do the job to provide reliable electric. There are 31,770 customers served in the city of Norwalk. Tree-related outages for 2021, and keep in mind that this is only until the beginning of October. It does not include October, November, and December. There were 28% of the outages were tree-related, and there were 395 outages affecting 14,000, roughly 15,000 customers. So it's a fun little way to look at a bigger picture for the town for the year and a little bit longer. So here's a better illustration, Mr. Livingston, of the 2022 work plan. So the scheduled maintenance trimming is going to be 78.5 miles. There's the backbone mileage and the lateral mileage for the town, for the city. And then there is mid-cycle, but what we're looking for on mid-cycle, and this is in between that 4-year rotation. So mid-cycle, meaning in the middle, is to survey what was done 2 years ago to make sure that we don't have any tree mortality or dead trees that may pose a risk that have failed between the last time we were on the circuit and currently. And there's 35.1 miles of that survey. So the schedule for the town, we have estimated start times. And what we want to qualify is that the circuit schedule is an estimated timeline. It's subject to change. It can be that we can have weather, we can have severe storms, we can have engineering projects, and where we start is based on reliability as well, which means it can change or fluctuate. This is a rough idea. We'd like to be started on East Rocks, West Rocks, and Newtown Ave, and the area of that, the neighborhoods around East Rocks and West Rocks, because those are the 2 worst performing circuits in this city. And part of that is going to be addressed from an engineering standpoint, and part of that is going to be addressed from a vegetative standpoint. I can elaborate more on that as we move forward tonight. Another illustration of that same timeline is, how long is it going to take to do the 17R11 or East Rocks and West Rocks? Right, so we're looking at January to April, we're looking at January to March for the smaller of those 2 circuits. And I put main roads here. It doesn't include the side roads, but as we move in, I do have this for everybody, which are the actual roads that will be and have work performed on them and the circuit that they're associated with. Right, so you get an idea of how long it's going to take to move through the area with everything that we have. Essentially, we're going to be in Norwalk right up until the beginning of November, end of November. So as I had mentioned earlier, I did want to include a key list of definitions so that it's a little easier for everybody to understand, because if we're not all speaking the same language, it's hard to understand. And information is probably the best thing that we can provide, and what these actually mean. ETR, standard or scheduled maintenance trimming. What is mid-cycle? What is backbone? What is enhanced tree trimming? So this is just something for your own personal knowledge so that we can all speak to this intelligently. Not that we wouldn't, of course. The other thing that we did provide as well as that timeline is a detailed map for the city of where we're going to be working and what roads are involved in that scheduled work. So the magenta or the pink is your backbone, the blue are your laterals or single phase, and your green is the mid-cycle that we discussed. And this is the area that we're going to be starting in here. All right, that's the 17 Rs, that's East Rocks, West Rocks. And we do have some small circuits down by Town Hall. We have some small circuits over by Main Street and 123. And then there are a few circuits that come in from neighboring towns. We have 2 circuits that come in from Westport, and we have 2 circuits that come in from New Canaan. And then lastly, we will be down in Rowayton and the Flax Hill area towards the tail end of the year, beginning of the summer. And again, those roads will be illustrated for everybody as to where we are and when we're there. That's what I have for everybody. Open it up for questions or follow-up.
Ms. Nadjelski-Eichner.
I believe Ms. Shanahan had her hand up.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks, Nora. I do have a couple of questions. I've looked through your definition key, and one of the concerns I see is that some of these types of treatments include herbicide, and I want to know what herbicides are used, why they're used, and whether or not there's notification of likely homeowners. As of course you know, we're on watersheds that pour right into Long Island Sound. It's very much of a very big concern for us.
Absolutely, and I completely understand the question. Yes, you are notified 100%, and you have the ability to say no, of course. The herbicides that we are using are glyphosate in a concentrated form, and it's applied directly to a stump of a tree that is known to be a basal sprouter. So something that's going to put up sucker growth if it was removed and it still had viable root system.
So is that not an ingredient in Roundup?
It is one of the ingredients in Roundup.
Really?
If the products are used properly, and they are very effective, and there is very little runoff. We don't broadcast, we don't spray randomly. It's an application to the stump only.
Is this something where homeowners can know that has been put in any vicinity of their homes? Is this something that the city will let them know?
Abutting properties, and that would be us. We would
And
let
so
you know.
do you just notify with little yellow tags, or do you actually knock the door and say, by the way, we're going to do this, and if you want to object, here's how?
You can object for your property. On an abutters property, it would be by the Connecticut abutters property list. And if you are on the abutters list, we would let you know.
Quite concerning. If there is, there's going to be a lot of work done in Rowayton. Is it possible for Mr. Livingston and I, because that's our district, to go with Mr. Torres and see what you're planning on doing? We're quite
Absolutely.
concerned. So can we have a tour with you in our district?
I would love it.
That'd be great.
Can I just follow up quickly to Ms. Shanahan's concerns about glyphosate? Do you specifically tell the residents that that is being used on the nearby property, that particular product, because it's very concerning. Very concerning to me.
I completely understand. And there are options outside of glyphosate as well. And yes, we do.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question, and it's for Mr. Torres or Mr. Carr, if they're still on. Is it possible for us to ask that Eversource never use that chemical in our city? That's for Anthony or Chris. I don't know if they're here.
Hi, no, I'm here.
I'm here.
You want to take this?
I'm gonna let the boss take that one.
Well, so we could, now Pura, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, Pura doesn't necessarily exclude or include any types of chemical applications, right? So there wouldn't be something that Pura would say that the municipality can't regulate, right? I mean, have you come across municipalities that have said we prefer to use this application over this? And for obviously rightfully for environmental concerns?
So what I'm going to do here, Anthony, is I'm looking at the literature right now, and it shows the product Pathfinder on the literature, and I have to look at the active ingredient to be certain that it is a glyphosate product, and it very well may not be. But let me look at that, and we can do it while we're on the call this evening as well. But it's Pathfinder 2, which is the product that's being used.
Okay.
Well, Lisa, before you put Mr. Carr on the spot, maybe we should be thinking ordinances.
Yes, I wondered whether or not Anthony and Chris on their own can make a decision about this, but we certainly can talk about ordinances. We will be, probably.
I can tell you, Councilwoman Shanahan, that DBW does not use such products.
We are aware of that. We are aware of that. And so it's, again, it's really concerning. The product should be entirely banned from my perspective.
No, I completely agree. Okay. Do you have any other questions? I'm looking at the active ingredient now.
Well, do you have to use herbicides at all?
It's recommended, and it is part of the scheduled maintenance pruning that Pura dictates. We do give the option, but I'm looking at the active ingredient now, and it's trichlor. It is not, and I state it is not glyphosate. And I can send that label to Chris Torrey as well as Paul, and we can include that in the minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
That works. Thank you.
But back to the original question, do we really need herbicides? I mean, that chemical happens to be particularly horrible, but why do you need to use an herbicide?
To limit the growth coming back from a invasive species that's underneath the line.
But it's not always an invasive species, right? Sometimes it's a trait that you said.
Correct. And we don't treat
you're
everything.
You're using it on growth, but not necessarily an invasive species. You're using an herbicide. So why? Like, how fast do you need to have whatever the growing underneath be addressed? Is it something that can't be used with, can't you cut it from time to time if it's necessary? Why do we need to use an herbicide at all? I'm just trying to understand.
On a 4-year rotation, you have, take for example, Tree of Heaven, Ailanthus, right? This is a tree that's capable of growing 7 to 10 feet annually. If we have a 4-year rotation, we can limit that growth so that it doesn't become a problem in the lines. But do we have to? No. That would be an example.
Essentially what it does is it helps limit how many times you have to come to the city of Norwalk and prune.
Correct.
I had other questions, but Nora has had her hand up.
Yeah, Nora, go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. And I had a question there besides it's one of my questions as well. So can you talk a little bit about sort of how the work is done? I know that I have heard complaints from people that the work is not done to the standard that an arborist that someone would hire for their trees would do. So can you talk about the makeup of your crew, who's supervising, who's assessing the quality of the work, if we have any ability, you know, for Anthony or Chris or others to step in if the work is not being done to proper quality?
Absolutely. And yes, I am a licensed arborist, and I do the quality control for my crews. I have general foremen, and they need to be making proper cuts at the branch collars. They can't be stubbing cuts. They need to be removing the tree properly if there is a removal involved. But the pruning is very closely watched by myself. And yes, I do oversee the quality of the work that's done. I haven't
Will you be in the city every day?
I'm in the city right now.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
The crews are supervised daily by a licensed arborist.
The crews are supervised on a weekly basis by a licensed arborist. Their work, all of it, is quality controlled, right? But that's the relationship with me and my crews, and the opportunity to go out there and watch the work. Right. But yes, my office is here in Norwalk.
Okay. And if homeowners are unhappy with the quality of the work, how do they communicate that? What is their sort of recourse?
There are several resources on Eversource's website for direct contact for vegetation management, or you can reach out to me. Personally, my contact information is part of that package. And you would deal directly with me.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful information to have.
And it's also for the newer council members, Eversource cannot take a city tree down on city property without the city's permission. It still has to be posted by the tree warden under state law.
Actually, Chris, that's a great segue. So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about removal. And I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at all the trees, and what are you thinking about that? And how do you approach it? Do you have any sense of how many trees you'd actually fully remove, or how are you looking at this?
Well, we're just starting that process now, and surveys are done along backbone. We prioritize the trees based on the risk associated with them. If it's a healthy tree that's structurally sound, that has no outward appearance of imperfection, I don't want to take it down. But if you have a dead ash that's over the lines, or an oak that has a severe split in it that's structurally unsound, I'm going to make a recommendation for its removal. However, all those trees are assessed. I have what's called a TRAC qualification, which is Tree Risk Assessment Qualification. That's through ISA, the International Society of Arboriculture. And we look at a lot of different factors when it comes to the recommendation of a tree. But again, as Chris stated, nothing gets done on any town tree without their expressed approval, and that it's not an arbitrary thing. It's something that's very involved with a lot of different parties. And if I'm making a recommendation for a removal based on sounding a tree that may be hollow, Chris is going to take his team and he's going to go out and he's going to run a resistograph through that tree to make sure, is it actually hollow, or is it just me saying that? So we have some checks and balances in place here, but we're starting that process now.
Okay, and if you remove a tree, do you replace it?
It would depend, and we defer to Chris and we defer to the town concerning that.
Yeah, because we do have an ordinance on that.
Yes, of course.
It hasn't been a practice, Councilman Livingston, that Eversource has done in the past, but they are slowly gravitating towards tree replacement. We just got to keep pushing.
Okay.
Just
I have a question. How much time effort do you put into saving a tree that's maybe unhealthy, but not like badly too far gone? And I'm thinking, of a personal experience. We had a very large elm in our front yard, and we had an arborist look at it. We knew there were problems with it when we moved in. We had an arborist work on it. He I don't know what he did. He fed it. He gave it certain, products, and he checked on it periodically over a number of years. And we managed to keep that tree alive and beautiful for about 15 years. And then one of the storms sadly took it down. But yeah, how much effort would you put into a tree that's just, a little unhealthy, but is nowhere near needing to be taken down?
Well, Pura doesn't allow us the resources to do any kind of proactive work on a tree. They just don't allow us to have that resource. If a tree, and this goes back to basic arboricultural knowledge and the physiological portion of the tree and what species are you looking at. If I have a tree like an oak that's sound and isn't completely a problem when it comes to disease or insect, and it has some dead wood or dead limbs over the lines, I'm going to prune the dead limbs before I remove the tree or make the recommendation for removal of the tree. I understand that canopy is a huge concern in the city of Norwalk, and we want to help promote that as well. If it's a healthy tree that's structurally sound, I don't want to take it down. But tree mortality is something that's continuing. We still are dealing with dead ash, and a lot of them are large trees. And the unfortunate thing about global change and what we're seeing from an environmental standpoint is some of our trees are suffering. So it's going to be a multifaceted approach, and it needs to be looked at from a holistic means. But I don't want to remove a tree if it's healthy and structurally sound.
Ms. Shanahan?
So if you come out and you do your trimming and if you've trimmed it too rough and the tree dies, is this something, how do you address that if people are dissatisfied with how the process went?
So we can create a situation where we come out to the house with my permissioning specialist, and he asks if we can do the work, and you say no. And we can make compromises where if you say radical trimming, down in Rowayton, there isn't a lot of backbone. So the specification is not going to be as dramatic. And you can get light trim and you can be customer present, at which point it's you and me that are present while the work is being done. And if that's the way I need to get my specification for the tree, or as close to it as I can, I would rather do that than not touch them at all. Because we can look at it together and say, okay, they're going to cut there, they're going to cut there. I can bring a laser with me so you see where they're going to cut. And that's what we call a customer present. And I can be there with you. Absolutely. And I think that walk is going to help, because I can illustrate while we're there in the road visually, because it's hard to grasp. Not every area is pruned the same. And I know the sensitivity down there.
I appreciate that, Sam.
I grew up here.
It's going to be hard down in Rowayton. So I appreciate it. And I are already feeling the knocks on my door. So
I know
it would be great. We would really appreciate spending the time with you and Chris going through town.
I would be happy to.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. And thanks so much for this presentation. I live in one of the areas that you were starting in first. We have power outages way more than I'd care to say, right? So I appreciate the proactiveness. I also am thinking of two separate things. As you all know, we have that tree ordinance, and we don't yet have the legacy tree program up and running. And so I'm trying to think about the homeowners who have legacy trees, who would want a light trim potentially, or would want to have the service you just described rather, to Councilmember Shanahan.
Sure.
How do we make sure, since we're first on the list, especially where I'm at, that we make sure we can be proactive to save some of these old trees that may not yet be seen as legacy?
So you're up in that.
We've got a lot up here.
So you're up in the northeastern corner.
That's right.
So you probably have permissioning paperwork already.
Yeah, I can tell you what I did. I told a light trim on my 150-year-old maple in the front because I want, it's a feature of the house and I'm quite concerned, frankly. And I know I have neighbors too who are concerned that these are going to get hacked, frankly, and then we're going to be in trouble.
So
Yeah.
the last thing I want is something to like this. And I know the importance of our trees and our personal trees, right? It's yours. And after the meeting, either reach out to Paul or someone on the board, provide your address. I can coordinate something and come out and we can look at that tree and we can make it so that at least I have the paperwork that it's a customer present prune. And we can look at exactly what may or may not need to be done. The last thing I want is for anything to come in contact with the lines. Right? So if we can avoid that, I'll be happy.
And I understand, I'm gonna remove myself from this because I'm not looking for like some kind of, bat phone to you all, but I guess just for residents, who may not know, and then we show up, like, what can we do, right? Because I want there to be somebody out there very upset, and I see Paul has his hand up, yeah.
There's a few things that can be done, and we've done this for the last 15 years or so. Number one, when people are concerned about the trimming and they have questions, they can call customer service and talk with either Chris, Jose Ortiz, or I, and we can walk them through the process and coordinate with Eversource for the meeting and walk them through. Another thing, and this is a great reason we had one of the tree liaison programs that we have. If we have a liaison in the neighborhoods, they can kind of go out and keep an eye and watch what's going on out there. And if there are any concerns, they can then be the contact to get a hold of us too and work with Eversource. And then thirdly, and just kind of like Chris, and he mentioned that he was going to tell a story about what took place down in an area of Norwalk. That was a perfect example of the way the system works with everybody talking together and working together for these light trims and modifications. And I'll let Chris take over for that point.
Sorry. A few years back, they were doing pruning in the Village Creek area. And that particular area of town is very strict with their own association with trees. I mean, they won't even let you take a tree down in your own yard because that's the association rules. So they called us up and said, hey, Chris, can you come out? And Paul, can you come out with Eversource and take a look at the trees? And we actually 12 trees, I think, were slated to be removed that Eversource requested. And I think we took down one tree, and it was the homeowner agreed and actually thanked them for taking it down. But that's one example. And I would encourage all of the council members and all of the tree liaisons in the city, if they want to walk a route where tree work is going to get done for a project that the city's doing or a project that the city's not doing. Because one of the ways that as a city that we can leverage even private homeowners is we issue permits. We had a situation in Rowayton on Yarmouth that the sidewalk needed to be replaced, and there were two beautiful oak trees there. And we wouldn't give the driveway permit unless the guy agreed to keep the two trees that were adjacent to the property. So there's things that we can do as a municipality to help ourselves, right? And one of them is, sorry, Eversource is monitoring Eversource. They are a company that profits from what they do. So this particular group has been good. It's even better now with the transparency, I think. And things moving forward, I think people will see some real change.
And there is a lot of time spent in the background coordinating this stuff between the city and Eversource too. So it's something that will definitely be checked, definitely be monitored, and it won't be just going out on their own and doing stuff without being in constant coordination with the city. And they, as you've seen from some of the work they did with the Arbor Day, we've been able to get Eversource to come together with us and do more plantings and take part in the Arbor Day ceremonies and things. And that's all a result of trying to work with them with the program, with the new ordinance, and get everything to come together there so that they're good stewards of the environment as well.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the information. I just wanted to be sure folks know who they can reach out to. So I think this is a great start. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Ms. Young has a question.
Hi, so I really want to thank DPW Eversource for providing this information. I believe I heard you all say that this is really the first time we've come together to have this type of meeting in this way. And I think it's a step in the right direction. So I appreciate all the effort that went into making this happen. It's a lot of information. And
Yes.
so I think, to kind of continue that transparency effort, is this information going to be on the dashboard at all? I think just making this information easily accessible for residents. We've talked about this dashboard and being able to have a place and space where you can go and see what's happening within the city. And I think the other piece, because I heard, with Rowayton and in the area that Councilmember Johnson lives in, I think there's some real effort to coordinate. It's going to take some time and energy, but if we know when all these things are slated to happen, there could be those types of community meetings to really just inform residents about the process and what you need to do well before you're getting ready to do it. And whether that's through Paul, through the Tree Alliance or the tree committees or whatever, way we need to do it. But I think we've got all the pieces in place, but now we've got to utilize them, because as council people, that's a lot of work, right? I think, Paul, as you mentioned, having folks from different areas be that, person to go to. I think there's a lot of additional coordination that could help, because I hear Eversource's side. You can't be at everything, and you just can't. You've got to balance the work that you need to do with the desires of the city and the residents. And so I think there's a lot of continued effort, but this is a great start. But I think putting that on the city's dashboard and making it so that it's visible, you don't have to do too many clicks to find the information. We got to work on that. But great job. And I think we need to continue this. And I also feel like this should be a quarterly meeting with you folks coming to our meeting to give an update of some sort. I don't think this should be a one and done. So great job. And
Councilperson Young, too, what I'll mention is every year in the past, we put this map out on the city website of what's going to be done. So once again, we didn't want to do it until after the presentation tonight, but as of tomorrow, some of the documents that have been given to us by Sam and Kathy will be put on the city website under the utility permit section under engineering and public works, as well as the map that's scheduled for the year too. So that will go out on the website tomorrow. And they'll be doing a presentation. This presentation will also be coming to the Tree Advisory Committee. Sam and Kathy will be coming to them at the end of the month with a lot of the same information too.
I appreciate that. And I think and this may not just be for DPW, but I think as a city, we need to do a better job of making the information easier to find on the city's website. So I know we have that dashboard, and so we've talked about it, and there was a lot of effort put into that. And so utilizing that, I think, would be a good thing. But I know you all have been doing all this work.
I think we all agree with you on that, Ms. Young. And, that's, IT, communications. I think that it's something we really, as a city, we really need to focus on. Ms. Shanahan.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Darlene's comments because they were really well placed. And I think one of the things that we ought to do, Paul and I can work with you, is we should really be inviting a lot of our organizations to the TAC meeting. NTA should definitely be invited, knowing that this presentation is going on, maybe the Land Trust, some of the other, stakeholders in the city of Norwalk who really care about this. Just get ahead of it and make some explanations. And it is going to make your job a little harder, Eversource, because it's going to get people stirred up to some degree, but it's also going to give people an explanation and an understanding of, what your job is. So I think it's just part of it. And if we can get ahead on the information, that would be helpful. And I'm happy to work with you on that, Paul.
Can I just make a comment? Thank you. I've worked with Sam for a while now, and what I found about him, he is the calmest, easiest person to work with. And I can't think of a better person to be out talking to our customers on something that is obviously very sensitive to everyone. So he has a style and a professionalism and that makes him a real asset to our company. And I think he'll be an asset to the city and to all of you in communicating these things and working with your constituents, our customers. So, I think it's a great partnership. I didn't say that in the beginning, but everything we've done with Anthony, with Chris, with Paul, Vanessa, Drew, that whole department and the city at large, but particularly this department because of their relationship to dealing with trees in the city. I mean, it's been fantastic. And, I can't thank them enough. And it's this kind of partnership and communication opportunities, to even meet with you that they've made available to us that I think will go a long way in helping everybody understand the process, feel that they have a voice and can raise their concerns and be heard. And Sam is just a great resource for you and for Eversource to get those things worked out.
Thank you, Kathy. Ms. Shanahan, thank you very much, Kathy. Those are very kind words. I did want to mention that in the meantime, I forwarded the label of the herbicide that we do use to Paul as well as to Chris. The product is called Pathfinder 2, and I will dig a little deeper into the what's dictated to us by Pura under the scheduled maintenance trimming for stump treatments and whether or not we can come up with a greener alternative for the city of Norwalk.
I so appreciate you addressing that very deep concern of ours. So thank you.
Yeah, and appreciate, just echo that comment, but also you say you apply it to stumps. Does that mean you only apply it to trees that are removed?
Only to trees that are removed that are alive, which are really not as many as you would think, unless there are those obvious structural imperfections. But it's applied to stumps, but live stumps.
Okay, so I mean, just to put it, I'm trying to figure out the issue. And so, I mean, I don't think we should use herbicides, but leaving that aside, you're not putting it on that many. Okay.
Can you use a stump grinder on a live?
No, we don't grind stumps. We cut flush to the ground as safe as can be for the saw and the person operating the saw, and then the product is applied to the top of the stump. The one piece of information that I did provide for the city in helping, can you see that? There's the 3-leaf brochure that I showed earlier does have that illustration on the back side of it. And it's under Connecticut statute 22A, 66A, require that certain herbicide label information be provided to the owner of the property where the herbicide is and will be used. So.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I don't want to bury you in this, but there have been concerns that from time to time underneath lines that go by, open areas, sometimes where there's gravel there, that sometimes you all apply herbicide there to get rid of growth underneath, wires in places which are right of ways and things like that. Is that, so you only use it on stumps, or are there other uses that you make of herbicides? Can you dispel that rumor in some way?
Well, from the point of this conversation, I can only speak to roadside distribution. I can't speak to transmission and their usage and substation and their usage.
So there might be usage there that you're not speaking to, that you can't speak to.
It's not my job.
Right.
Meaning,
I'm just asking.
I don't want to speculate. I know roadside distribution.
Great, thank you.
And there is a difference between the roadside distribution and then the high tower transmission lines.
100%.
And who might be able to answer that question for us? Kathy, can you help us with finding somebody at Eversource who can tell us whether or not,
Yes.
besides
yes.
using other places for
Yes.
other types of uses?
Yes.
That'd be really helpful to know. And if it's
We have-
happening in Norwalk and where it might be happening.
Our veg management team that work on the transmission right of ways and handle transmission vegetation would definitely know. So I can follow up with them and get that word back to the city, Paul, Chris, Anthony, to share that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Najewski-Eichner.
Very briefly, and this is really more for perhaps us to consider, but I did wonder if there's an opportunity here educationally. I'm thinking about the folks who have the backbone lines in their yards and may not even realize that they have sort of a higher risk line, or a line that might be subject to more cutting because of that. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to take something like Sam's list of short trees and distribute it to homeowners who have backbone sort of lines. Just trying to think about how we might sort of synergistically work some of our goals around the tree canopy into the fact that people are already going to be alerted and aware of this issue, this year, to do some education.
It's amazing. Education is probably the best thing we can do. And there is more than just that list. There is information based on the 30 and 30, which is the 30 most recommended trees that can be planted within 30 feet of lines, and how to plant a tree properly. What are the resources to get those trees? What if I could get 100 of those trees, in any form? And I think there's a very good opportunity for education, both from a community standpoint as well as neighborhood associations. And it's one of my favorite things to do. I've got great posters and great information on bees and pollinators and pollinator species. And there's just a wealth of beautiful native species that can be right underneath the lines, and you'd never know it.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic goal for perhaps for us to talk about in terms of the communication is, if people are, since this is going to be drawing a lot of attention, I think particularly in the East Rock and West Rock neighborhoods, if we're getting people alerted to how they sort of address their concerns about Eversource, maybe we can simultaneously get some of this information out, would be great. Happy to follow up on that conversation.
Sam,
yes, me too.
With the packages that go out for the notifications, can we put some other information in with them, like the educational stuff?
I have a brochure that I just picked up. I saw a couple boxes in Berlin when I was there this morning. It was called "Let Them Be: Illustrated Roadmap to 30 Buzzworthy Pollinators to Plant Near and Around Power Lines." It's huge. It's a great looking brochure. It's all hand illustrated by this artist Alicia Purdy, a plant illustrator in Massachusetts that's pioneering just amazing work she co-founded Tree Northampton. And she did the illustrations for this beautiful brochure for us for Eversource. Yeah, absolutely. I can add that kind of information, Paul.
Be awesome. That'd be amazing.
I can talk to my team first thing tomorrow morning for anything that hasn't been completed and start doing exactly that.
We'd appreciate that. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's really fantastic.
And I'll just add that this is these are great ideas that I can take back to my management as well, because the more people are informed and educated, and people don't think about these things in their everyday lives. They just know they love their trees. So whenever we can bring that information forward, help them understand why we're doing this to begin with, it's to keep the electricity flowing and keep the lines up there in the air, because trees do cause a lot of our outages. Yeah, I think it's going to benefit everybody. So I really appreciate you all in your, spirit of working together on this. I think it's going to be great for everyone.
So just if I could ask, follow up, that brochure, which sounds great, does it differentiate between native and non-native? Because a lot of the trees you pointed out earlier were non-native.
Well, the list does illustrate whether they are native or non-native. It was probably close to 30%, 35% that were native. So let me open this up and take a look, and it doesn't illustrate as to whether or not it is or isn't, but I mean, you've got
Although if it's pollinator supportive, my guess is it's probably mostly
a
native,
lot of
right?
them are.
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no, Nora. I mean, I've been looking at this for a long time, and there's a lot of, it's just not the way that it works. So Eversource, we're really interested in just adding natives to Norwalk. One of our goals is to have 80% natives. So it would be really helpful if you're going to share information like that, that the native, whether things are native or not, are super important, and will be definitely reassuring to our neighbors in a way that non-natives will not be. Some of the non-natives are even invasive. We just really need to focus on natives.
I understand. And yes, we can certainly work with that for compiling a comprehensive list of species compatible for natives. There's a wealth of information out there. It's just putting it together.
That's great. Thank you. I really appreciate your sort of willingness to engage with people on this, because I know as someone who's bought a tree and you look at it and it's 5 feet tall and you don't really think about where it's going to be in 10 years. So I think getting people alert now would be certainly helpful. So.
Anything else from anyone? I mean, I'd just like to thank you, Kathy and Sam, very much for your openness to hearing our concerns and addressing our concerns, and for, moving forward with more transparency. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. So next item on the agenda is item D, monthly solid waste report from November of 2021.
Hey, Madam Chairwoman, I'll be brief with items D and E. So November 2021, as compared to last year, our curbside tonnage for MSW, which is municipal solid waste, which is garbage, is down approximately 7% for the curbside pickups. Now that's everything that's picked up again, as the name indicates, it's everything that's picked up along the curb. The MSW tonnage, which is the total amount of waste leaving the city of Norwalk that we pay for, that is down 8%. So that clearly shows that the pandemic effects are lessening. More people are getting back to work. And also for the recycling, the curbside tonnage is down approximately 6%, and the transfer station TS tonnage is down approximately 2%, which gives the whole overall monthly tonnage down 6%. So garbage is down and recycling is down. It's not good that the recycling is down, although our revenues still are in the positive as compared to last year. But this is an important tool, and I like this report because, Madam Chairwoman, as we explained in the past, it's good to see the trends for garbage. It kind of dictates what's going on in society. But if you delve down more into what's happening, if there was tremendous spikes or increases of, let's say, at one time, because there was 20%, 28%, almost 30% of the garbage, and that sustained that type of increase, we'd have to revisit our operating budget request and plan for the next fiscal year accordingly. So that's why it's important that these numbers are not, I know by the time we get to this point in the meeting, we're running on fumes, and it's not the most glorious of data, but nonetheless, it does have a purpose. I know the staff takes a lot of time to prepare it and make sure that the numbers are correct, and it lets us know that we're trending in the appropriate direction fiscally. So if there's any hiccups or any bumps that are coming, we could see that months in advance.
Mr. Livingston, go ahead.
Thanks. Chief, I think I can't remember if I asked you this question. Are you able to break down the recycling by route to see if we can do any sort of comparison between where it's down, or figure out why it's down?
Councilman Livingston, I truthfully do not know the answer to that question. I will defer to Mr. Torrey or Ms. Palladino.
I'm looking at
I
that.
see Jessica shaking her
She's saying no.
All right.
No.
It
I
would
didn't- I-
be
I-
incredibly difficult to do
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I'm
I
just trying to
would
figure out
be
why.
because-
before, and I thought that was the answer, and I didn't want to misspeak.
It would be incredibly difficult because city carting, or wind waste as they're now called, uses a lot of their trucks interchangeably. So I would need to get a lot more information from them. And there are times where they'll finish a route and not dump for the day, but then use the truck in a different route in a different section of town. So there's a lot of accumulation of numbers with the truck when they dump.
Okay, I was just trying to see if any way we could figure out what's going on.
I think what Anthony is alluding to is November of last year, the numbers were up high. We were in the throes of the pandemic. We were looking at both garbage and recycling numbers that were up, 18, 20%. So this decrease in 6-8% is us leveling back out to a new normal. The other issue has been part of the transfer station floor has been closed. So we're seeing less tonnage coming through our transfer station, which is seeing less tonnage out of our transfer station. So I think we're leveling back out, which is what Chief Carr was saying.
Okay, thank you.
And there was a question earlier, Madam Chairwoman, about the contract status for city carting. All 3 contracts expire June 30th of 2023. The contract to operate the Crescent Street transfer station, which is owned by the city of Norwalk but operated by city carting currently. The recycling collection and disposal, which city carting provides citywide, and then the garbage MSW collection, which is provided within the 4th taxing district, which is basically all the taxing districts in the city minus the 5th. And the 6th, obviously, the 6th has their own private carter, AFK, but the 5th taxing district, being the non-sewer portions of the city, don't receive garbage pickup. So the 4th taxing district is everybody but the 6th taxing district and the 5th taxing district. So those contracts are up for renewal in June 30th, 2023. And myself, Mr. Torrey, and Ms. Palladino have been in conversations about what's next. We do have a meeting. We will be scheduling a meeting with the mayor's office to get a better sense of direction. If we're going to maybe consider citywide municipal garbage pickup again, without excluding commercial garbage pickup, that is. So there was a model that we had done a conceptual analysis many months ago, probably almost a year ago now, where we looked at different scenarios, and the model basically was citywide garbage, excluding commercial. But we will be meeting with the administration and regurgitating and revisiting those concepts and see if we still want to apply the same policies, what the interest is. And then obviously for the upcoming for the upcoming contracts, we will be issuing a formal RFP. But first we need to nail down exactly what the direction that we want to go in and get clarification and buy-in and support from the administration. So we're going to present them with different scenarios and we're going to look at what we looked at last year a little bit more in detail, and then make a collaborative decision, and that will dictate the narrative inside the RFP. So the short answer is all 3 of those contracts will be out and advertised as a request for proposals. So any vendor that's qualified will be eligible to submit a bid for that work. It will not. The current contract will not be extended or amended to city carting.
Looks like Ms. Young has a question.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Mr. Carr, what did you just say about city carting, your last comment?
City carting, that the current 3 contracts held by that vendor, they will be reissued for public bidding, and so they will be solicited for public bids, meaning that any qualified vendor could, right? So there's no extension, no amendment. Public Works has no plans to come back to the committee or the full council requesting an amendment for that vendor.
I just have to say this because I've noticed it. City carting has done a good job at hiring Norwalk residents. And I questioned if that would happen when they first came on board. But I have to say that I know that they do have hired a significant number of people from Norwalk.
Yes,
I
I
think was a
personally,
very good thing.
I concur. Over the holidays, I received several resumes from random residents and random people looking for employment, and I did forward them to City Carding. The employment was specifically for sanitation. Some people had thought that we still perform our own sanitation services. So once I just basically explained it briefly that the City of Norwalk doesn't do their own sanitation, it's contracted out. I did tell them that I would forward their resume to the operations and to the management team, and they could do as they want with it, as they feel fit. That's their job to vet out the candidates. But I thought it was nice that people felt comfortable enough to reach out to Public Works, and I think that everybody deserves a shot and a break. So as soon as any resume I get related to sanitation, I do forward it to City Carding, because a lot of times it is somebody just looking for employment, and who knows where they'll end up as far as if they get into City Carding or another vendor and do great things. So everybody deserves a fair shake.
But I think a lot of people come into town and they say, we might say that we'd like for them to push to hire locally, but I want to just say that City Carding actually did that. And so I think that was a good thing. Thanks.
Want to move on to food scraps?
Yes, food scraps. So far in fiscal year 22, we have collected 33.6 tons of food scraps. We had a high month. The reporting month in November accounted for the pumpkin pickups that were very successful. We did it, like I said, 33.6% from the start of this fiscal year, July 1st of 2021 to present day. And the split between the transfer station, because for those who don't know, we have two locations for the food composting scrap program. One is at the Crescent Street transfer station. The other one is at the Roy Eaton Community Center. And right now that split looks like 71% approximately of the waste is received at the Roy Eaton Community Center, and 29% is received at the Norwalk transfer station. And just to give a reminder, last year how we finished off that split and that ratio at the end of the fiscal year was 65% Roy Eaton Community Center and 35% transfer station. So we're trending pretty close to that. And again, Madam Chair, when we discussed a third location will be implemented once the proposed operating budget is hopefully approved. Staff did put a request in for approximately $12,000 to support and fund a third location, which will likely be Cranberry Park, pending no unforeseen changes or a different direction. We did apply for 2 grants over the last 2 months, different composting grants, and unfortunately both were denied, and we went out to recipients. We applied, I think, for $15,000 each. So kudos to Chris and Jessica. Unfortunately, we weren't the lucky winners. That's all I have, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you for that update. All right, is there anything else? All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Shanahan, motion to adjourn. All in favor? All right.
Aye.
Good
All right.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Good night, all. Thanks a lot.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.